Ground 18. By the time they had finished examining their training field for the next day, it was already dark. Naruto and Sasuke had each taken Tenten and Sakura home respectively before meeting up just before they entered the Uchiha compound. The boys were mildly surprised when they entered their house and saw Makoto in the company of Hitomi, Yuki, and Arashi. "Ka-san, I still don't know why I'm here," Arashi grumbled, his red hair shielding his emerald eyes that were glaring at his mother. "I could be asking Sakura-chan for a date or something." Yugiri laughed at her son's anger. "Well then sisters, I've got mine, Tte-bane," she exclaimed with barely contained glee as she grabbed onto Arashi. "Hey!" the red-haired boy cried out. "And I've got mine." Makoto joined in by latching onto Sasuke's arm, the boy looking as confused as a fish out of water. "And Naruto is mine then, isn't he?" Hitomi said softly as she walked up to him and held his arm in hers. The blonde boy looked up questioningly at the white-eyed woman. "Hitomi-sama? Where are we going? What's going on?" The three grown women looked at each other and laughed. "We're going shopping." Yugiri leapt up happily. The three boys frowned. "Why do we need to go with you then?" Sasuke asked. "Yeah, it's not like we can help you much there," Naruto added. "Like I would want to shop for women's clothes. That's a waste of time, Tte-beo." Arashi shouted out only to receive a harsh bonk on the head from his mother. "Not for a silly." Yugiri laughed out. "We're getting all three of you new clothes." The three boys paled considerably at that statement. "And we're throwing away all your old clothes as well," Makoto added. "Just to make sure you wear your new ones." The three boys shared a glance and were all considering making a run for it until Hitomi spoke. "Your input in your new clothes will be valuable as well, but we will make the final decision." "Oh, and you aren't thinking of running away right now, are you?" she asked sweetly. Arashi gulped guiltily. "Because if you are," Yugiri threatened in a low voice as she stepped in between the other two women, "then I doubt it's a good idea." The veins in Hitomi's eyes suddenly bulged while Makoto's Sharingan flared into life. In between the Dujutsu users, Yugiri let loose 8 chains that hovered around all of them like hungry snakes. The killing intent they then shot towards the boys made them whimper in fear. Moms were scary. Naruto found Osamu a lot less scary than this sight in front of him. Just as suddenly as it appeared, their legendary powers receded, leaving 3 very compliant boys to the mercy of their excited mothers and mother figures. Hitomi had asked to join in because she didn't have a son and was curious to give it a try. "Let's set out right now and have some fun, Tte-bane." Yugiri chimed in happily as she dragged Arashi through the door. 3 hours later. 3 very stressed out boys joyously burst out from a clothing store in the middle of Konoha's business district. The last 3 hours had practically been hell. First there was all the fussing about with what were needs and what were wants. Then it came to the fussing over style. Then it turned over to the fussing over color. Then the fussing over the quality. Then fussing over size and practicality. And last but not least, fussing over price. It was a constant argument against their mother's every choice, but only in the last hour had they finally agreed on one format which all the boys agreed to share. They would follow Sasuke's style of clothing from the shirt, shorts and arm warmers that he wore as well as for the shin guards. They would, however, add on to this. Underneath each of the black shirts and shorts were tight-fitting long sleeves and what appeared to be tight-fitting spandex similar to Guy's suit. There were also the additions of masks and hoods. Sasuke vehemently argued for a face mask like Kakashi wore. Naruto and Sasuke's purpose for the mask were similar, to hide their faces. In Naruto's case it was to hide the whisker marks, while in Sasuke's it was to hide his face to lessen the risk of fangirls that seemed to be slowly building. Arashi wanted one just to look cool. Each of them also had deep hoods on the backs of each shirt that could completely cover their heads, effectively hiding their very distinguishable hair. Arashi's bright red, Naruto's golden blonde and Sasuke's unique hairstyle were all beacons in a crowd of people. Their chosen attire gave them a very shinobi-like appearance in all black save for the arm warmers and shin guards. It was then that the boys decided they did not want to look exactly like the other. The clothes were cool however, so they decided to edit their attires based mostly on colors. The tight-fitting inner parts and the masks would all be a different color for each boy. At first, the older women had refused until Naruto and Sasuke began explaining the purpose behind each choice of color and that the mothers could choose the shade. For Sasuke, his code color was red. His reason being that his Sharingan was red and that the color would match nicely and make him a little more intimidating. It did not compromise stealth in the dark either, and when they chose a very dark shade of red, Sasuke was satisfied. Naruto had also argued with the same points that his brother had used, being that his eyes were orange and that a very dark orange would also match. Arashi for some reason chose yellow. One-of-a-kind red hair with startling emerald eyes with a black suit, and yellow clashed with it all. He looked like a walking traffic light. They had to admit, however, that it was an enormous improvement regarding the yellow jumpsuit he had been wearing previously. The three women looked at the boys with pride. They looked good and carried an aura of mysteriousness around them because of their quiet attitude. Sasuke and Naruto had their arms crosses and hoods up, calmly taking in their surroundings. Arashi, however, was a different matter. The red-headed Uzumaki began leaping up and down excitedly about how awesome he looked that people gave the mysterious yellow idiot a wide berth. The girls on the street, however, paid the dancing traffic light no heed but instead eyed the two under the hoods. The only things they could clearly see was their hands and toes through the black sandals the boys currently wore. Sasuke was happy that they did not know him or Naruto, and he knew that as long as both of them remained silent then they were going to be cool and just fine. See Yatsushiro Raiko's profile for an idea of what the boys look like. After the boys had finished their productive if somewhat forced shopping spree, they realized just how tired they really were. The night passed quickly enough for them to end up comfortably in their beds, unaware of the heated meeting their mother had attended right after. Council chambers. Why did you let it graduate from the academy? A civilian counselor shouted out, distaste evident in his voice. I agree with him, yelled out another. Putting it in the academy was bad enough. Now you have let it graduate and are practically allowing it to grow even more powerful. I thought you were better than that, Hokage-sama. Hiruzen sat at the head of the room glaring at each and every one of the civilian counselors that were vehemently protesting against Naruto's graduation. His sentiments were being shared by the majority of the shinobi side of the council, as most had been convinced otherwise by their children. The ignorant fools could not even catch the hint, and Hiruzen felt his temper rising higher and higher, threatening lash out. We should have killed it all those years ago when he was still helpless. Now what will he do with this power? His parents should have thought twice before allowing such a demon spawn to exist. This last phrase hit hard on those shinobi who were aware of Naruto's heritage, and the room was very quickly filled by oppressive killing intent, none more so however than Hiruzen. The old man let loose the strongest amount of killing intent that made even the Anbu present in the room come close to soiling themselves. In a show uncharacteristic anger, the Sandame smashed the table in front of him into two as he yelled, "Enough!" Almost immediately the room was silenced as they put their full attention towards the angered Hokage. The civilian council, I understand, has been the one to summon this meeting involving all of the major clan heads of the village. The reason for summoning apparently is the recent graduation of Naruto Uzumaki. I do not see the purpose to continue such a pointless meeting, so I want to end it. The civilian council wants me to take the boy out of the active roster of shinobi, then it is denied. Hiruzen stated with authority. The foolish counselors however restarted their protests once again, unaware of the impending danger. But Hokage-sama. He needs to be taken out. On what grounds? Hiruzen all but growled. This got the aggressors thinking about what they could use. Mebuki Haruno decided to step up. I suggest for the safety of his current teammates. My daughter is on the same team as it and I fear that harm may come not only to her, but to the Uchiha and the other girl present on Team 7 as well. Hiruzen eyed the blonde woman, his gaze bored into her. Then I suggest asking your beloved daughter of her opinions regarding Naruto once you can. You may be surprised but the entire team has seemed to manage forming strong bonds with each other and that is something that is essential in the stability of the group and separating them now will be a mistake. The other shinobi in the room nodded their heads in understanding. In the world of shinobi, bonds with each other could mean life and death. Doesn't that run the risk of it corrupting them, Hokage-sama? And what, may I ask, will the boy corrupt them with? As far as I can see, Naruto is loyal to the village and follows orders as best as he can. Are these not good qualities? Hiruzen countered, getting ready to lose his patience once again. His pranks. He apparently has no respect for the village or anyone of authority. Defacing the Hokage monument should be very clear to his amount of respect held here and the way he addresses us is also very lowly. I beg to differ. Hiyashi decided it was time to start talking. I have shown the boy fair enough treatment, which is what he rightfully deserves. He refers to Hitomi and myself with the Sama honorific and he behaves whenever around us. This goes to show that he will only respect those who respect him. Hiyashi activated his Byakugan as he glared at the man that had snarled at him while he had been speaking. And I have to say, he might actually be a good influence to his teammates. Shikaku yawned as he stretched. As troublesome as his pranks may be, think about it. How come he is never caught while preparing it? How ingenious and creative are his designs? And why is it so difficult for our Anbu to hunt down an academy student in their own village? Each prank in itself is, in a way, a form of troublesome training. Although I admit that the cleanup is a drag. Having said his part, the Nara clan head lowered his head back to the table, hoping to catch a few minutes of sleep. Hiruzen nodded his head. Good points, Shikaku. I guess we will have to up our Anbu training program. But this discussion is closed. Naruto Uzumaki will remain a ninja of Konoha. But the man never got to finish as Hiruzen's killing intent spiked once again and he stomped on the already broken remains of the table. Shut up and listen. Hiruzen yelled, adding chakra to his voice making it nearly deafening. First of all, this meeting is irrelevant. I have been too lenient with this council and I will restate a few ground rules as some of you seem to be forgetting your place. The Hokage began as he glared more specifically at the civilian side of the council. Firstly and most importantly, this council will not tell me what to do. I am the Hokage and you are merely here to offer your views and opinions, but I will still be the one with the final say in the end. You seem to have forgotten that this is my village that runs under me. Are we clear? The normally kind Hokage's voice now carried a grim authority that nobody present wanted to question and they all nodded. Secondly, the civilian council has forgotten that it has absolutely no say in the shinobi affairs of Konoha. You have been appointed in this position to help me manage civilian affairs, but anything regarding shinobi will be dealt by us and us alone. This very council signed the agreement with this statement present on it, or have you forgotten? You are no one important. More like a manager of a certain district if you ask me, but other than that you have no other power or authority. This is a shinobi village and every ninja with a Hite-8 is out of your jurisdiction and answers only to me or a shinobi of higher rank. This means that Naruto was out of your reach the minute he exited that academy with that forehead protector. I do not care if you run the academy. I was planning on changing that anyway. I wonder why I allowed civilians to deal with the curriculum of our future shinobi. I will see to this. Hiruzen added as he stared down each and every member of the civilian council that all looked like they wanted to be somewhere else right now. It was a harsh blow to their pride. I will also address this situation of ignorance towards Naruto. If he needs something, then he should get it while being treated as you would anyone else. Before you open your mouths, take a moment to think. I am not showing him favoritism, I am ordering you to treat him as shinobi of Konoha, and refusing to do so shall be treated accordingly, as treason. Ah yes, there is also another matter I appear to need to deal with. It has come to my attention that you pesky pigs are taking every opportunity to gain even more unnecessary rights and money through illegal means that you think I have not noticed. I have had it with you. Kaharu, Homura. You both will accompany me back to my office to review anything that I may have carelessly sighed to find these loopholes. Danzo, get your root agents and gather information from every trader here in Konoha and their transactions and sales as well as details. These deceptions will be cleared and punishment dealt. I will not stand to have corruption within my village. Is this clear? By now the civilian council was sweating profusely. What had happened to the kindly grandfather they could push around? They had suddenly been reminded that this man was known as the god of shinobi for very good reason, and old age hadn't really dulled him that much. His 3 advisors, however, were very pleased with the recent turns of events. This was the man they would follow as Hokage. Not the senile old fool they had mistaken him to be. I have other things to be handling instead of wasting my time here with you. Expect to be summoned tomorrow at any time during the early morning. If there is nothing else to be said, then you may all leave. Now. When no one moved, the Sandaime summoned fire to both of his hands as he glared at them. Almost immediately after, the room had been cleared of civilians while most of the shinobi present bowed to their Hokage before bursting out laughing. Despite his earlier outbursts, Hiruzen felt a smile tugging at his lips as he sat down to get to work with the rational part of his council. What an interesting day. The next morning. At 9 the next morning, give or take a few minutes, the 2 girls of Team 7 had found their way to the Uchiha compound in search of the brothers. Kakashi had instructed them to arrive at 6 in the morning without any breakfast. Unfortunately, both girls had decided to sleep in until they had been forced awake by their parents. After freshening up and having a hearty breakfast, the girls went straight for the boys. After a brief knock, Makoto answered the door and smiled at the 2. Good morning to you too. I assume you are the teammates of my children and that you are here to collect them. I am sorry, however, they don't seem to want to get out of bed. I hope the 2 of you will have more luck. She explained gently as she opened the door to give way to them. Tenten cracked her knuckles. Don't worry, Makoto-san. We'll get them up, right, Sakura? Tenten asked, grinning sadistically. The pink-haired girl returned the grin. Yes, we will. Yugiri-san, where is their room? Makoto chuckled to herself when 2 minutes later, she heard Naruto scream. This was closely followed by Sasuke a few seconds later. The Uchiha clan head eyed the 2 girls' faces suspiciously as they walked down the stairs with grins reaching their ears. She raised an eyebrow. What did you 2 girls do? Oh, not much. Tenten replied jovially. We gave Naruto a nightmare where Kami banned ramen from this world, and Sasuke, well, we showed him a future where he only got the Chunin rank at around 100 years old. Despite herself, Makoto burst out laughing. She would love to try this on her sons if she got the chance. Not to mention the fact that she now had some dirt on them. As she cooked breakfast, Makoto decided to get to know her son's teammates a little more. 10 minutes later, a grumpy blonde and a grumpier Uchiha appeared next to the table, fully dressed in their new attire but with the hoods down. The girls gave a nod of approval at the attire and how much more mature and threatening it made the 2, while said boys growled at being messed with in their sleep. The good-natured banter carried on for a while before Makoto told them to get going as the Hokage had just called a council meeting where she was expected to appear. Laughing heartedly, Team 7 made their way to the training ground, fully prepared for their genin test. Training grounds. Kakashi was new to this. The mere concept of it got him irritated. He was being made to wait. He had shown up 3 hours late for the supposed genin test that Team 7 was supposed to have, but it was still an entire hour before he managed to spot the team making its way towards him. The white-haired man narrowed his eyes at the new appearance of the boys. Are they imitating me? He asked himself, unsure whether to be proud or offended. He decided just to be friendly for the meantime, they were still young anyway. Hello my wayward students, how nice of you to finally show up. Kakashi greeted them with a nice smile. He was slightly put off when both boys put their hoods up and crossed their arms. Afterwards they seemed to stay still, and since he could even see their eyes due to the hood, he had no idea as to what they were thinking. Sakura and Tenten however seemed to only find his reaction to their teammates funny and were giggling at their sensei. Kakashi-sensei, can we start the genin exam now that we're finally here? Sasuke asked. The white-haired man studied the new outfits of his male students. Both of them were acting accordingly to the attire, and from what he could see, a statue had just spoken to him as the faces were hidden. Yes, we will. Do you see these? Kakashi asked while dangling 3 bells in front of them. He continued after the girls nodded, simply assuming that Naruto and Sasuke were watching him. Your objective is for each of you to get a bell within a 3-hour time frame. If you fail to do so, then you will fail the test and all of you will be going back to the academy. I advise that you come at me with the intent to kill or you will not get a bell. Sensei, Sakura called out as she raised her hand. If we need to each get a bell, then why are there only 3 bells when there are 4 of us? Kakashi's smiling eye was ever present as he gave them their answer. Oh yes, I almost forgot. When the time is up, whoever doesn't have a bell will be sent back to the academy while the other 3 will remain in my team. In short, at least one of you will fail today. Contrary to what he may have believed, Team 7 didn't protest or turn amongst themselves as he had hoped. They simply looked at each other and nodded, signaling something that he could not see. What are you guys up to? Kakashi asked himself. He tensed a little when Sasuke walked forward to face him while the other 3 stayed back to observe. Once he got close, the Uchiha broke into a run towards Kakashi. The white-haired man ducked under a flying roundhouse kick and raised his arm to block a follow-up kick to his head. He swiped Sasuke's jab to the side and tried to punch him in the ribs, only for Sasuke to dodge a little to the side before swinging his left arm towards Kakashi's face. Kakashi backed up just enough to be out of reach of the punch before stepping forward for a counter. Luckily he noticed that Sasuke hadn't stopped turning and instead had continued spinning on his left foot to bring up his right heel for Kakashi. The white-haired man caught Sasuke's foot and watched as Sasuke used his grip against him by bringing up his other leg to target Kakashi, who was forced to let go of the captured limb. While moving back he barely moved his head to the side just in time for a kunai to nick his hair. Kakashi then noticed Sasuke going through a few hand seals before taking in a deep breath. Kaden, Gukakyu. Fire release. Grand Fireball. A large ball of flame shot out of Sasuke's mouth towards Kakashi, who raised a water barrier to protect himself. Sweden. Sujinheki. Water release. Water encampment wall. The flames were extinguished soon enough, and when the smoke cleared, Kakashi saw Sasuke standing still doing nothing. Then he felt a small tug of chakra and realized that he had somehow become caught in a genjutsu. But how? When? Sasuke isn't that proficient at genjutsu. Kakashi thought. The one-eyed man raised his hand into a seal and chanted, Kai. To his relief, the genjutsu had been a very low level one and went away quickly. To his horror, however, the genjutsu had been masking the presence of another enormous fireball that he had to dive away from. Upon getting up, he noticed another fireball heading his way and he frowned as he felt the slight disruption of genjutsu. Upon dispelling it, he discovered that the latest fireball had been merely an illusion. A very good illusion at that. He noticed Sasuke take in another deep breath and grimaced. Why was the boy throwing out fireballs like this? He watched the fireball grow but felt another pull of genjutsu. What was this? Another illusion of a fireball. Kakashi shook his head to clear his thoughts and dispelled the genjutsu, only to find that it wasn't working. Sweden. Sujinheki. Water release. Water encampment wall. Kakashi whispered out without further questioning about why the illusion hadn't dispelled. He watched as his water barrier managed to extinguish the fireball once again. He narrowed his eyes. If the fireball had been an illusion, why was his water wall reacting to it? It was a good thing he was near a river, otherwise he would be feeling a large drain on his chakra for calling out this much water. One thing was for sure, that last fireball was real. Then what was that genjutsu he dispelled for? He couldn't tell what was real and what wasn't during that instant. Kakashi turned to glance at Sakura when he heard her laughing. Oh look. Kakashi-sensei is also being affected by my genjutsu stuff. The plan to test Kakashi-sensei first worked awesome, Naruto. Sakura laughed out. Realization slapped Kakashi. Hadn't Itachi warned him of the illusions that Sakura had been providing to aid her team? And now they had just made their intentions clear that they were testing if the illusions worked on him or not. They did actually have potential to become a team after all. He was brought out of his musings when he finally noticed Naruto moving. The blonde boy cracked his neck audibly and stretched. Well, now that's done with, I guess it's time for me to help Sasuke. Tenten, watch our backs. Naruto ordered before leaping towards Kakashi at high speed. The Jonin barely moved out of the way from the vicious punch that would have shattered his face if he didn't move. Before he could launch a counter-attack, he was forced to dodge as Naruto's fist soared overhead and he moved back before his head got taken off by the boy. Seeing an opening, Kakashi gathered chakra to his fist and punched Naruto as hard as he could in the ribs. It was better to take the juggernaut down first, as he seemed to be the one leading the team. He gasped in pain when he felt his knuckles almost shatter despite being coated in chakra and leapt away from the juggernaut that didn't even seem fazed. His internal senses tingling, Kakashi ducked a little just for Sasuke's foot to sail over his head. Since Sasuke was behind him, he felt a push that caused him to stumble towards Naruto before tripping. Looking up in surprise, the Jonin managed to roll away before the ground beside him was shattered by a powerful stomp from Naruto. While getting up, he managed to spot 3 insane blurs of black whizzing towards him and managed to catch the first kunai and use it to deflect the other 2. He looked to the source to see Tenten standing a little way back with what looked like an oversized ceiling scroll. So she was going to try and catch him off guard. Not a bad plan actually, considering how he had his hands temporarily filled with the 2 boys. Sakura was nowhere to be seen, which was also bad since her genjutsu made it very confusing for him to fight properly. And Naruto wasn't even using his unique powers or ninjutsu yet, and he doubted Sasuke was only capable of the Grand Fireball technique. Realizing the danger of his current situation, Kakashi quickly unveiled his Sharingan to aid him in the battle. He was surprised when he could practically feel Sasuke and Naruto grinning. Sharingan. Sasuke called out, revealing 3 tomo in blood-red eyes that matched the color of his mask and sleeves. Suihogan. Naruto called out as his eyes lost their pupils and his entire eye colored a bright, dazzling orange. Let's make this interesting. The blonde Jinchuriki shouted as his form took on that of Bumblebee. The special seal Yugiri gave him absorbed his clothes, preventing them from getting ripped apart, and stored them for later. The yellow robot cracked its knuckles. I won't increase in size yet because I want to have fun, it exclaimed in a high-pitched, whirring voice. Fuden, Henkin Fudo. Scarring wind tunnel. The horizontal cyclone of wind viciously tore up the ground in front of it as it headed straight for the masked Jonin that made his escape by a kawarimi with a log. He watched on, fascinated, as the log he used was shredded completely by the wind tunnel that burrowed deep into the ground afterwards like a drill. A massive drill. Kakashi then felt heat going up his back and turned to see Sasuke standing behind him. Kaden. Ryuka. Fire release. Dragon fire. He countered with the technique that would use the least amount of chakra, as with how things were going, he would need as much as he had. Sweden. Mizoriba. Water release. Wild water wave. The two techniques collided head-on for a few seconds, with steam forming in the middle before Kakashi's jutsu finally overpowered Sasuke's. The Uchiha was now running towards Kakashi with a kunai in hand. Wait. He's not going as fast as he can. Kakashi noticed just before he saw a shadow getting larger at his feet. He rolled to the side and was lucky to avoid the miniature Bumblebee's axe kick. He then leapt to the side when Bumblebee sucked in air. Fuden. Daitapa. The tree behind him flew back from the force of the gale, which Kakashi was thankful to be away from. Are these kids even genin? Kakashi asked himself pointlessly, already knowing the answer. From the corner of his eye to his right he noticed Naruto charging towards him and leapt backwards, only to receive a shattering kick to his ribs from the real Naruto. Damn it, Sakura! Kakashi growled. He partially understood now what Itachi had meant when he said they worked as a team. He then noticed that Naruto and Bumblebee were standing next to each other and wondered why the boys were whispering. He grew uneasy when they nodded to each other. Kaden. Ryuka. Fire release. Dragon fire. Fuden. Henkin Fudo. Wind release. Scarring wind tunnel. The two attacks merged with the tunneling wind accompanied by fire swirling around it, burning hotter than normal. Seriously? A combination attack? Kakashi screamed mentally. He spotted a log and managed to do a kawarimi into the open clearing, and he watched as the combination attack of wind and fire seared through several trees like a hot knife on butter. He suddenly realized that he was in a less crowded section of the forest he had been forced into, and he noticed the bun-haired girl at the edge of the clearing grinning at him. She threw a kunai almost lazily at him and he felt the need to sweat drop. After what he had just been through, this was almost a joke. Then to his horror, two normal Naruto shadow clones appeared on either side of Tenten. Ninpo. Kunai Taju Kage Bunshin. Ninja art. Kunai mass shadow clones. The Kage Bunshin on the right cried out, and Kakashi watched on with dread as the lone kunai formed a massive fall of flying steel. Fuden. Fujin no Iki. Wind release. Wind God's breath. The already deadly wall shot forward at an unbelievable rate, quickly closing the distance towards the Jonin. Doden. Doryu Heki. Earth release. Mud wall. Kakashi countered. The mud wall raised itself quickly enough to block most of the onslaught, and Kakashi winced as he heard thousands of kunai thud into the back of the wall. His relief was short-lived when Bumblebee and Sasuke made it out of the forest on his side of the wall. Orange eyes flashed with glee. Doden. Ukina Shujeki. Earth release. Great impact. The large boulder shot towards Kakashi and was further boosted by Bumblebee's next jutsu. Fuden. Idana Fujin no Iki. Wind release. Great wind God's breath. The masked Jonin poured chakra into his feet and began running sideways along the mud wall to move out of the way. The mud wall collapsed almost as soon as the giant rock barreled into it, leaving a smirking Tenten on the other side along with two clones that were ready to assist. Fuden. Henkin Fudo. Wind release. Scarring wind tunnel. Both clones cried out as two tunnels formed to chase after the fleeing Jonin. Kakashi was now sandwiched in between two deadly fronts and was doing his best to dodge anything thrown at him. The problem was, Sakura had suddenly joined in the assault and he could no longer tell which attacks were fake, real, or if there were any invisible ones threatening to seriously injure him. Itachi, how did you survive this chaos? Doden. Suin Kabe Sukashu. Earth release. Twin wall squash. Naruto yelled. Kakashi found himself trapped in a narrow passage in between two gigantic walls that were slowly moving to crush him. At the ends of each tunnel there was someone waiting. Tenten at one end and Sasuke on the other. Kaden. Gukakyu. Fire release. Grand fireball. Fuden. Fujin no Iki. Wind release. Wind God's breath. Nope, not going out that way. Kakashi decided and turned to take his chances with Tenten only to see a wall of kunai approaching him. Damn, not this way either. Kakashi did the only thing at the moment and ran up the wall. Just as he jumped over it, the twin walls crashed into each other with a sickening crunch. While in mid-air, Tenten managed to get a lucky shot and a kunai found its way into Kakashi's upper leg. It wasn't embedded too deep, but he could no longer fight safely for the moment. One careless move and he could die. Maybe I shouldn't have included the attack to kill part in this. Kakashi mused before making a lightning clone to take his place as he disappeared. Landing in a tree not too far away, Kakashi quickly treated the wound as he watched the battle unfold. One of the Naruto clones had transformed into a miniature barricade along with the mace and had joined the mix with Bumblebee. The clone didn't last 2 minutes. Barricade had managed to slam his mace straight into the clone's skull as it exploded into lightning. Luckily for Team 7, only Barricade and Bumblebee were within range of the blast and the two robots didn't seem very much hurt at all. Kakashi winced as the clone's memories returned to him. Those robots hit hard. He saw the team gather in the middle of the clearing to discuss. Well, 3 members did. Sakura was probably under orders to remain hidden. Suddenly he felt a wave of pure chakra wash over him and he blinked. Found him. The clone that had released the chakra pulse yelled out happily as he pointed directly at the white-haired man who cursed. He had been masking his chakra to stay hidden. If only he knew Naruto had that ability, he could have remained hidden for a little longer. He watched in awe as Bumblebee and Barricade increased their size to their full heights to tower over the others before reality slapped him. Crap, this guy is going to go all out. Kakashi-sensei. Barricade called out in a harsh, gruff voice. We have decided that we do not want you in the forest. We will now force you out. The red-eyed robot stated before charging along with Bumblebee. What the? Kakashi didn't get to finish as he was forced to abandon the tree he was resting on as it was shattered to bits, courtesy of Barricade's mace. The two robots then began an unrelenting assault on the masked Jonin. Throwing trees, chunks of dirt and using their jutsu to wreck a path had Kakashi running non-stop from place to place while assaulted by what were in his opinion 2 psychotically destructive robots, a pyromaniac, a horde of kunai and a dreamer. Knowing it would probably be worse outside of the forest than inside. The masked Jonin tried his best to remain within the forest. However, due to the current circumstances, he reluctantly made his way to the original field of the training ground. Behind him lay a trail of destruction caused by his never-tiring pursuers. Now that he was in the middle of the field, he faced all 4 members of Team 7 standing side by side once again. Although maybe it was considered 5 members since Naruto was Bumblebee and Barricade. Shaking his head to clear his musings, he decided to check how much time he had left and what he saw made him groan audibly. There was still 2.5 hours that he had to live through and that was in no way appealing. Trying to buy himself a little more time, the Jonin dropped a smoke bomb to temporarily get out of Team 7's crosshairs. Doden. Mogaragakure. Earth release. Hidden mole, Kakashi whispered as he burrowed quickly underground. Up above ground, Naruto sent out a chakra pulse to check for Kakashi again and whether he was hiding under a genjutsu. When he found nothing, he grew slightly confused. Kakashi wouldn't run from a battle. That left only one thing. He was underground. Despite improving his chakra pulse range and quality, Naruto couldn't accurately figure out what was underground as rocks and people gave back very similar readings. Well, there was a way to fix that. Barricade and Bumblebee picked up the other 3 members of Team 7 and placed them on their shoulders before the 2 massive robots stood back to back. Doden. Jishin Hakushu. Earth release. Seismic clap. Both transformers cried out as they clapped their oversized hands together. Because they were standing back to back, the seismic waves emanating from both of them increased and tore up most of the surrounding clearing, leaving deformed and crumbled rock strewn about in a deep crater. It was as if a small meteor had just landed there in that field. In between two large pieces of debris was a very surprised-looking Kakashi. It wasn't every day you got flushed from what was usually a very good hiding strategy, and it took the white-haired man a little longer before realizing that he hadn't gotten as much rest time as he would have liked. Kakashi leapt up into the air and decided to try a few of his more dangerous techniques. Naruto seemed capable of keeping the team safe, or so he hoped. Kaden. Ryuka. Fire release. Dragon Fire. Being more experienced in the jutsu than Sasuke as well as having more chakra and greater chakra control, the flames he breathed out were much more intense and enormous in size as they rushed towards their target. Kaden. Gukakyu. Fire release. Grand Fireball. Sasuke called out. What? Kakashi thought. That fireball won't be enough to defend against my attack. Fuden. Idana Fujin no Iki. Wind release. Great Wind God's Breath. Barricade yelled out. Kakashi frowned. Well, here it comes. I shouldn't lose faith in them after all. The already enormous fireball roared into life as it charged straight through Kakashi's stream of flames. The masked Jonin's eyes widened in surprise when the massive ball of flames gained even more power from Kakashi's jutsu, absorbing it and adding to its size. Doden. Doryuaheki. Earth release. Mud wall. The one-eyed man crouched next to the wall as the combination attack slammed into it. Even from the other side of the barrier, Kakashi winced as he felt the blistering heat cause sweat to drop from his blow. When the flames died down, Kakashi jumped over the wall that had probably saved his life. Suddenly he heard a cry of, Doden, Ukina Shujeki, coming from Naruto and leapt off the wall as it crumbled from the impact of the massive boulder. He created a shadow clone just as he dropped a smoke bomb to mask its presence. Satisfied, he made his escape into the trees, happy to leave his clone for a while. Nay, Kakashi-sensei. Barricade called out as the smoke cleared. I think it's time to show you some of our combinations. Team 7, Combination 1. It instructed. The clone tilted its head questioningly while the original watched intently from the tree line. Kaden. Gukakyu. Sasuke yelled as he unleashed another massive fireball. Doden. Ukina Shujeki. Barricade shouted out as a large rock shot out from in front of him. The boulder easily caught up with the fireball and Kakashi was intrigued when the boulder caught fire. It could now be considered a giant flaming rock. Great. Here is another combination move. Kakashi scowled. Bumblebee then put his metallic hands into a seal. Doden. Tamaishi Kage Bunshin. Earth release. Boulder shadow clones. The solitary flaming rock then multiplied into 7. The Kakashi clone realized the potential danger and created 2 other Bunshin alongside himself that spread out, ready to give the original enough time to rest. Fuden. Idana Fujin no Iki. Both robots called out as the strong gust of wind produced practically flung the flaming rocks even faster towards their targets. This wasn't the only effect, however, as the fires on the rocks burned even brighter. Up in the trees, the original Kakashi watched in trepidation, wondering how his clones would deal with this threat. One of the 3 used a kawarimi to get out of harm's way only to get dispelled by a kunai to the head thrown by Tenten. Okay, no kawarimi while dodging that. Kakashi mentally listed. Another of the clones tried to dash to the edge of the line and seemed out of danger for a moment before being suddenly dispelled. What? Kakashi thought, slightly shocked before his clone's memories came back to him. Ah. Sakura's genjutsu hid some of them to hit people who thought they were safe. Clever. Kakashi complimented her. The only clone that made it out, alive, was the one that had used the hidden mole technique to pass underneath the danger. It didn't last long before Barricade and Bumblebee tore up the field again with another seismic clap, leaving the clone vulnerable. Taju Kage Bunshin. Naruto yelled as hundreds of him appeared around the edges of the artificial crater. Together they began bombarding the poor clone with the massive rocks as it skillfully weaved in and out of the rocks that threatened to dispel it. It took Kakashi a moment before he realized that no fire jutsu was being used. Wait a minute. Where's Sasuke? He managed to leap off the branch just in time before it shattered. Oh damn it, Kakashi-sensei. You didn't have to move. A Naruto clone pouted from behind him just as Sasuke appeared. Kaden, Ryuka, Fuden, Henkin Fudo. Wind release, scarring wind tunnel. Kakashi scowled beneath his mask as he was forced back into the clearing along with his clone. Said clone was instantly dispelled as its momentary distraction had cost it. Now the masked Jonin was alone in the middle of the crater. Off to the side he saw Tenten and Sakura standing unguarded. Desperate for a distraction, Kakashi decided to hit a low blow by targeting the two girls. Sweryuden. Water release. Water dragon bullet. A giant water dragon with yellow eyes erupted from the nearby stream and gave a mighty roar before charging towards the two girls. According to plan, Bumblebee jumped in front of the two while shouting, "Doden, Doryuaheki." An oversized wall shot up and the large dragon smashed hopelessly into it before losing its shape and turning instead into a giant puddle. That wall is way too big. What a waste of chakra. Kakashi commented to himself. Doden, Yushinai Buko. Earth release. Unrelenting wall assault. Suddenly, boulders of all different sizes ranging from small pebbles to human-sized boulders began spewing from every inch of the wall like a machine gun, making an unrelenting wave of rock that Kakashi was having trouble avoiding. In desperation, the masked Jonin took out a kunai and began channeling lightning chakra through the kunai. Kakashi felt a little safer when he heard the lightning crackling along the kunai. His Sharingan flitted about mercilessly in his eye socket as he moved at his top speed to dodge and slice through the incoming earth. The clones that had originally been bombarding his clone also chose that moment to renew their attack on the original that was obviously pinned down at the bottom of the crater. Kakashi cursed. He felt like he was in a war all over again. It didn't help that he couldn't see every single projectile and sometimes he didn't even know if it was real. Sakura, I swear this is getting annoying. Kakashi growled as a small rock connected and sent him flying. Opposite from the deadly wall that had yet to cease firing, Tenten launched another lone kunai that was multiplied and given extra momentum by accompanying Naruto clones. Kakashi barely managed to raise a wall in time to stop the horde of kunai. Along the masked man's peripheral vision, he noticed Sasuke walking next to the wall of death, as he had now deemed it. Breathing a steady stream of fire perpendicular to the wall caused the already deadly ammunition to catch fire, making it even harder for Kakashi to cut through rocks without getting burned. While finding difficulty in footing due to the piling up earth, he noticed Sasuke split into two with the other one aiming a jutsu at the sky. Kaden, Hausenka. Fire release. Phoenix flower, the Uchiha yelled out, firing a multitude of smaller fireballs high into the sky. What was that? Those would have been much more useful if he fired them at me. Kakashi mused, though silently thankful he hadn't. Doden, Iwa no aim. Earth release. Rock rain barricade declared in a booming voice as thousands of human-sized rocks appeared in the sky. Kakashi's heart dropped at the sight. Wasn't he dealing with enough? He would really have to talk to these kids later about holding back in spars. Then again, he had told them that they should come at him with intent to kill. Boy, was he regretting that now. Even if his mind was temporarily flying, Kakashi's body reacted all the same as the boulders and rocks being fired at him from the ground had not stopped. Out of the corner of his eye he noticed the raining rocks catch fire on their way down from Sasuke's earlier Phoenix flower technique and cursed out loud. Great. Just great. Fuden, Daitapa. Wind release. Great breakthrough, Kakashi called out as he sent a strong gust of wind to temporarily give him some room to form hand seals. Doden, Sansu Hogodumo. Earth release. Three-layered protective dome. The thick, three-layered dome formed as fast as it was able to, and just as it shut, the first loud thuds resonated within the closed interior, where Kakashi took a deep breath to sigh in relief. He plopped down uncharacteristically onto the floor as he tried to catch a breath. Cage Bunshin. Kakashi summoned a clone. It nodded before disappearing underground to try and assess the situation safely. The original Kakashi didn't want to risk heading back out for a while. Better his clone than him. Basking in his momentary rest, Kakashi listened closely to the voices outside as they continued to throw jutsu at him mercilessly. Then again, it might have just been Naruto. Doden, Asu Supaiku Mero. Earth release, Earth spike maze. Kakashi heard. Kakashi's curiosity piqued, but he patiently waited. Soon enough his shadow clone dispelled itself and Kakashi found himself in a very unfavorable predicament. His defensive style had gotten him trapped within a gigantic maze made of giant spikes of earth consisting of different sizes and coming out of the ground at different angles. The clone's memories informed him that it was very difficult to find his way out. Kakashi formed another clone to go and investigate. No sooner than he sent it out, he heard two more attacks ring out. Kaden, Goryuka. Fire release, Great Dragon Fire. Fuden, Idana Fujin no Iki, Wind release, Great Wind God's Breath. Kakashi grimaced as his clone's memories returned to him. Apparently the plan had been to trap someone in this maze. If the earth spikes hadn't killed him as they had been forming, then the boys would finish the job. While an opponent was trapped, they would create a blazing inferno to make sure nothing inside the maze survived. He commended the brilliant, deadly idea as even through all three domes Kakashi felt the heat burn his skin. The masked Jonin created one last clone and ordered it to head underground and only show itself once it reached the edge of the clearing safely. As quickly as it arrived, the blazing inferno outside disappeared, leaving a very confused Kakashi. Did they think he was dead? Somehow he didn't believe that. There was a sinking feeling deep in his stomach. Doden, Zeninu Saramu. Earth release, Almighty Slam. Fuden, Kei's no Hogo. Wind release, Protection of the Breeze. Kaden, Gukakyu. Another combination attack. Kakashi wondered. How dangerous could this one be? Kakashi was put out of his musings when he felt himself the small tingle of his body being pulled. That only meant one thing. He was being summoned. If this was happening, then he knew that whatever the next attack had been, it had frightened his clone enough to summon him out of the dome. It was a special technique that he had developed with the help of his former sensei, the Yondaime. He had a seal placed on his back that allowed his clones to summon him away from danger by simply using the same hand seals as the Kuchio's no jutsu summoning technique. The technique had gotten him out of a good many tight situations safe and sound, and he was regretting not using it earlier. He underestimated these kids, that much was for sure. Tamaishi Kage Bunshin. Boulder Shadow Clone. Okay, that doesn't sound good. Kakashi thought as he gave in to the pull of the summoning. He poofed into existence next to his clone at the edge of the clearing and gave it a questioning look before looking towards the destroyed training field. Even though they were probably a good mile away, what Kakashi saw made his jaw drop low. There were no less than 10, three-story large rocks rapidly descending onto the maze that he was supposedly trapped in. Not only that, the wind coating around the rocks had caught fire, making the meteorites streak fire on the way down. And if this wasn't enough, on top of each one there seemed to be 3 Naruto clones. He barely heard what they chanted next, but he definitely heard it. Fuden, Idana Fujin no Iki. Wind release, Great Wind God's Breath. The already blazing infernos on each meteorite roared as they grew in size while they plummeted even faster than before to the already abused ground. It was a spectacle to see. The impact caused on the ground certainly lived up to its namesake. The ground trembled violently as the shockwave passed through it, followed closely by the displaced air and debris. The deafening explosion shot outwards with the flames almost licking Kakashi as he was thrown back by the sheer force. It didn't help that he was partially blinded by the immense amount of light that seemed to have burned his retinas. He collided powerfully with several trees before rolling to a stop. Kakashi's vision was still blurry and he could still hear the ringing of the explosion in his ears. In his bewildered state he came to only one coherent thought. What would have happened if he was still inside the dome he had set up? He was sure it would have probably killed him since the effects of the combination had affected the area as far as it did. He heard thundering footsteps in his groggy state and noticed that he was surrounded. Bumblebee was charging in from the right and Barricade from the left while the latter was swinging the enormous mace. In front of him, Tenten threw a lone kunai and the two clones beside her grinned. Kakashi already knew the outcome of this. Another wall of kunai. He turned round and saw Sasuke preparing a fire jutsu with 3 Naruto clones. Kakashi groaned audibly. He decided it was best if he dove underground to get a temporary break only to suddenly lose consciousness. Unknown to him, Frenzy had been underneath him the whole time and was only invisible due to Sakura's meddling. When Kakashi had prepared to dive underground, the small robot had leapt up and delivered an uppercut that connected solidly with the underneath of Kakashi's chin. Despite its small size, Frenzy did carry a large force behind its arms and Kakashi had just learned that firsthand. All the Naruto clones, including the 3 Transformers, dispelled as the original got down on his knees and panted. Yada. We did it, TT Ibeo. Naruto cheered weakly. Sasuke collapsed beside him also panting hard. Yeah, we knocked out a Jonin-level ninja. He agreed. Sakura laughed. You guys couldn't have done that without me. Admit that much, I was useful. Tenten put her hands on her hips and glared at Sakura. Hey. I helped too. Naruto snickered. Yeah, Sakura, Panda-chan did help a lot. He grinned as he lay down on the grass. But she needed me to be useful. Naruto gulped when a kunai cut off a few strands of his hair as it thudded down next to him. Before Tenten could explode, Sasuke whistled appreciatively. We did a number on this training field, didn't we? Tenten grinned. Yes, we did. Training fields usually get a little roughed up. But the excessive damage was done by Naruto. Behind his orange mask, Naruto sighed. I did what was necessary anyway. We wouldn't have managed to knock him out if I didn't. Fine guys, we all had a part to play in this. It's called teamwork, remember? Sakura chided. But even if we did knock him out, Kakashi-sensei did say one of us would fail. What do we do now? The pink-haired girl asked nervously. Naruto took off his mask and gave a mischievous grin while giving her a thumbs up. Leave that to me. Sasuke took off his own mask and smirked. When my brother gets a look like that, somebody's really going to get it. The 4 genin laughed. Council room, same time. All the members of the council were silent as they stared in shock. In the middle of the room there was a massive projection from the crystal ball in which they had all watched Team 7's genin test from beginning to end. They had seen every technique and plan done by the newly graduated team and were beyond impressed. Even Hiyashi had his mouth open. At the head of the table, Hiruzen's victorious smile was threatening to split his face. Do you now see what this team is capable of? The Hokage started with a rhetorical question. Taking the Naruto off this team would destroy this teamwork, and I doubt that anyone we replace the boy with will work this well with any of the members of Team 7. The new addition would just hinder them. Jonin Kakashi Hatake may not have been going all out in terms of lethal jutsu, but the fact still remains that he was knocked out. If this is what they can do now, then what will they be capable of in the future? Denying this team what they need to grow will be the same as denying Konoha's potential for powerful future protectors, and this can be labeled as treason. If any one of you has anything left to say, then I suggest you shut your mouths. What you have just witnessed is undeniable, and even an academy student will know that resistance is futile. Any questions? The Sandaime glared at everyone, daring them to rebel. He gave a satisfied grunt when no one did and sat back down in his chair. After lighting his pipe, he gave the council a confused look. What are you still doing here? Get lost. He made a shooing gesture with his free hand. Danzo, Homura, Kaharu. You 3 stay, we have matters to discuss. The council knew a dismissal when they saw one, and they all got up to leave. Only Makoto and Hiyashi were requested to stay behind. Hiruzen reactivated the crystal ball for them and told them to watch and call him in case anything happened. In the corner of the room there were 3 other Jonin sensei of teams 8, 9 and 10 and they each came forward to watch as well. Having completed their own genin tests earlier on in the day they had been free to watch the spectacle that was Kakashi's spar against his team. Wow, Kurenai breathed out, her crimson eyes still disbelieving of the event. Guy's boisterous laughter echoed throughout the room. What a most unyouthful way for my youthful rival to fall. I believe I can shamelessly point out that my own team has not knocked me out. This shows that my flames of youth burn brighter than his. A thoughtful look then came onto his face. Although Akane and Lee are very dangerous. Even more so than Neji. The civilian girl is scary though, Anko, Guy shivered unconsciously. Asuma lit his own pipe as he scowled. Speak for yourself, Guy. I was tricked by my team. The bearded man spoke in a bad mood. I knew putting Shikamaru and Kaide as strategists on my team would be a good idea, but they treated me like a kid. He angrily sucked in more smoke. Kurenai smiled at the reports. I'd say I got the easiest team then. They are generally very good at tracking and found me easily every time. However, their fighting skills were average, not enough to take me down. Their cutting edge at least is Arashi. He is powerful, if only I can remove that idiotism thing from him then he would be very valuable. He is very easy to trick with genjutsu and loses his anger easily. I have to work on that. The 3 were then interrupted by a slight cough from Makoto. It seems Kakashi is finally returning to us. Hiyashi said with a small smile. Hiruzen and his 3 elders ceased their secretive talks to temporarily watch the next scene unfold. Back with Team 7. Kakashi slowly opened his eyes and felt his head swimming. There was also a throbbing pain underneath his chin. The last thing he remembered was, he snapped to attention. That fight with his team. What happened? He remembered being surrounded then just blacking out. He noticed them casually talking in front of him and frowned. Not because they had defeated them, but because they were upside down, and he couldn't move. He wasn't even able to form chakra. After struggling for a few moments he gave up and grunted heavily. Sleepy heads awake. Tenten announced teasingly as the other team members turned and looked at Kakashi with wide grins. What happened? Kakashi asked. It was all he could do at the moment really. Huh. We knocked you out. I thought that bit was obvious. Naruto joked behind the orange mask and hood that the boy was wearing. A glare from the upside-down Jonin told him it wasn't funny while his teammates laugh. I think he means how we knocked him out, Whisker-kun. Tenten suggested. The blonde Jinchuriki crossed his arms. Oh that. Sakura covered one of my robots with genjutsu and it managed to land a hit on you before you went underground. Pretty awesome, right? Kakashi could have sworn there was a blinding grin underneath that mask. Robot. But 2 of them were on either side of me. Kakashi said in a confused manner. This time it was Sasuke who laughed. Who said my brother only has 2? Kakashi's lone eye widened. Deception is a ninja's greatest weapon, Kakashi-sensei. Naruto scolded. And I have recently seen that older and more experienced ninja tend to have a superiority complex and underestimate their opponent until it is too late. We are ninja, no one is to be underestimated. Kakashi smiled. I see Itachi has taught you well. But have you decided which one of your team will be returning to the academy? Kakashi asked innocently. Here was the moment of truth. Sure, they worked like a team and cared for each other to an extent, but here he was going to see just how much they cared for each other. This was usually the moment a team would crumble. He was definitely surprised when all of them shared an innocent look and smiled before shrugging. Sakura even went as far to throw all 3 bells back at the masked Jonin. I don't think we want anyone here to fail, Kakashi-sensei. If one goes back then it's better if we all go back. Naruto stated calmly. And who knows? Sasuke grinned. Maybe next year we will be on the same team again and get a Jonin sensei that wants us. That way we'll get to be together as a team next year as well. Kakashi's eye widened. This was it. This was the one quality he wanted in them. They didn't need to be strong or smart, just care about each other. By the way, I found a loophole in this test, Kakashi-sensei. Sakura added cheekily. You just said that we had to each get a bell. Naruto wanted to go and buy some for all of us since we still have over 1.5 hours left before the deadline. Sadly, you woke up before he could go. So you guys are all willing to go back to the academy? Kakashi asked. He smiled underneath his mask when they nodded. But we have a way to make you pass us no matter what. Naruto said boldly. Kakashi had been just about to pass them right then and there, but that last statement made him curious. What could they possibly do to him? What are you going to do? He asked. An evil glint seemed to shine off of every member on the team. You're going to torture me, aren't you? Kakashi asked a little nervously. He was sure he could withstand whatever they had in store for him and that they would kill or seriously hurt him. But there was the little fact that he was helpless right now, in what appeared to be chakra sealing wire wrapped completely around his body. He received nods in response. In a way, we are. Naruto said coldly. Kakashi had to give it to the two boys. Those new uniforms were really suited to the two of them. What could you possibly do to me? Kakashi taunted. He knew this was a bad idea, but they could be bluffing. Right. He sure hoped so. Getting tortured by Genin was not on his to-do list. He also gravely feared what it would do for his reputation. No matter what you do, you can't make me pass all four of you here. Do you really think you can torture a Jonin? I can withstand more physical pain than you can imagine. He stated confidently. Who said it was going to be physical pain, sensei? Sasuke chided, standing in a similar fashion to Naruto. Kakashi's blood froze. No. They couldn't know about Rin, Sensei, and Obito. Could they? Despite his inner turmoil, he gave them an eye smile. We'll see. He then noticed the two girls arranging wood in a small circle. What could they be doing? He thought to himself. Kaden, Ryuka. Fire release. Dragon fire. Sasuke called forth a small stream of fire that ignited the wood, making a small campfire, but with the middle of the campfire safe from the flames. Then Naruto unsealed a book from his pouch that made Kakashi's lone eye widen. You seem to be attached to this book, Kakashi-sensei. Naruto commented as he flipped through the pages. Let's see, the blonde boy continued. This appears to be the latest edition released 2 days ago by the little mark here. I would say you haven't gotten very far into the story yet, have you? Naruto asked as he snapped the book shut. Kakashi winced at the sound, already sweating. Instead of saying something stupid, he decided that it may be for the best if he kept his mouth shut. A sudden chill gripped his body when Naruto dropped the book into the center of the flaming ring. Now listen carefully, Kakashi-sensei. Either you pass all four of us in the next 30 seconds or this book is history. Naruto threatened. If Kakashi was sweating before, now he was sweating bullets. It was going to be a heavy blow to his pride if he submitted to the boy's terms. But could he really do that to the book? He doubted if Naruto knew it was a special, pre-ordered edition with special content at the end. The fact that he could see nothing of the boy's face didn't ease his tension, as he couldn't be sure whether or not the boy could go through with it. 10 seconds left. Sasuke's cold voice warned. By now Kakashi's lone eye was flitting rapidly between the blonde boy, to the book, and finally to the flames that were already licking its edges. 5. Naruto began to slowly go through the hand seals for a gale palm that would finish the book once and for all. Kakashi cursed. With his Sharingan eye covered, he couldn't tell whether or not Naruto was faking it. He struggled against all his bonds, harder to no avail. He watched helplessly as Naruto completed the hand seal sequence. Time is up, Sasuke declared. Naruto pulled his hand back. Fuden, Reppu. Stop. Kakashi's desperate voice finally rang out and all his students turned to him. You pass all right. You pass. No need to harm my precious. Sasuke, Sakura and Tenten stared at their sensei. They couldn't believe it. Naruto's plan had worked. And now they also had physical evidence of the pledges Naruto had managed to record it. Naruto burst out laughing as he saved the book before freeing Kakashi. Once the masked Jonin was able, he snatched the book away from Naruto and glared at the blonde boy for all he was worth as he hugged the book tight. Council room. Everyone in the room burst out into some form of laughter. Kakashi had just succumbed to the wishes of his genin squad, and all for the sake of the book. Asuma's pipe had dropped out long ago as the bearded man fell on the floor laughing hysterically. Kurenai was clutching her aching sides and hung onto Makoto as the Uchiha clan head giggled at the sight. Hiyashi had dropped onto his chair doing his best to keep up his stoic facade while laughing, which ended up in a funny expression. Guy was roaring with laughter and Hiruzen was chuckling heartily at the end of the room. Even the three advisors were amused with Danzo hinting at a smile. Attention! Hiruzen called out before chuckling again. We can wait for them in my office now, then we can congratulate John and Kakashi for his successful spar. The Jonin in the room erupted into renewed laughter as they headed out the door. 6 people now had dirt on the famous copy ninja. Team 7. After the laughter had died down and Kakashi had managed to regain a little bit of his dignity, did things start going back to normal. Team 7. Kakashi called out with authority. The team stood to attention and stood in a horizontal line in front of Kakashi. I congratulate you with what you have achieved today. This exercise was not a test of whether or not you could get the bells. Which you did, unfortunately. But a test to the care you show your comrades. You have shown magnificent teamwork today and were prepared to leave no one behind for personal gains. Here is a saying a great man once told me. Those who don't follow orders are trash, but those who do not care about their comrades are even worse than trash and are scum of the worst kind. My sensei before me and his sensei before him both devised this bell test for this very purpose. A test of the team. You have all surpassed my expectations and I am already proud to call you my team. Kakashi said proudly as his students beamed at him. As for your personal skills, I have managed to observe you each somewhat in our spar and I have a basic idea of what you can and cannot do. Sakura. Kakashi started. Yes, sensei. The pink-haired girl stepped forward. You have great chakra control but small reserves. Your genjutsu is advanced for your age but you still lack diversity and creativity, although I will admit, you know when and how to use the ones you do know effectively. I will train you in this as well as taijutsu and ninjutsu since you seem to be lacking in these areas and you need to know how to properly defend yourself just in case your team is unprepared to come to your aid. I would also suggest that you start studying medical ninjutsu as well since your good chakra control will make it easier for you to learn and we do not have a medic yet in this team. Kakashi stated his opinion to the pink-haired girl. Tenten. You have shown great talent in your weapons and I assume you are familiar with close-range weapons as well. Your support role on this team is vital but can improve. We will work on giving you supplementary ninjutsu to use along with your weapons since your taijutsu is up to par and you are not talented in genjutsu. The bun-haired girl nodded. Sasuke. You work well with Naruto and both your ninjutsu and taijutsu are above average for your age but we can still improve. Genjutsu will be simpler for you to learn but I will focus on giving you a range of ninjutsu to work collaboratively with Naruto. Kakashi continued. Naruto. You are the main power behind this team as you can readily support each of their attacks simultaneously just as they can assist you. Your diversity in attacks is commendable and well thought out if not a little destructive. We will be working on expanding your ninjutsu arsenal. I have to ask a question however, when did you learn those earth jutsus? Your last report stated that you were only proficient in wind. Kakashi inquired curiously. The blonde-haired boy nodded. I did. Until I had that fight with Osamu. It turns out I can actually copy jutsu as well, sensei, and after training in my mindscape at night and using shadow clones during the day, it's easy to get new jutsus down. He explained. The masked man showed his surprise. So you can copy jutsu too? Were you copying the ones I just used in the spar? Naruto nodded. Every single one. Kakashi gave him an eye smile. Perfect, that just makes it easier. What about you, Sasuke? Didn't you try to copy those earth jutsu as well? Sasuke shrugged. I did, but I don't think I have an affinity for earth. It takes up too much chakra. Kakashi nodded in understanding. Which brings me to my next point. The Jonin said as he distributed chakra paper in between all of them. This is chakra paper, just run your chakra through it and the paper will react. It will split if wind, crumple if lightning, turn to dust if earth, become damp if water, and catch fire if fire. Sakura ran her chakra through the paper and smiled. Earth. Tenten answered next. Fire. They all looked to Sasuke, who had a weird result. The fire was burning crumpled paper. It looks like you have two strong affinities, Sasuke. Kakashi explained as Sasuke beamed at him. The next anomaly, however, was Naruto's paper. It split into two before one side was consumed by water and the other by fire. Then both pieces of paper crumbled into dust. Naruto frowned. Did I do something wrong? He asked innocently. Kakashi was gaping at him. Naruto, wind is your primary affinity, but water and fire are both equally powerful after wind, and you seem to also have earth as a tertiary affinity. By now the others were all also gaping at the blonde-haired boy. Optimus. Kurama. Explanation please. With the way they're looking at me, I feel like what just happened shouldn't have happened. Naruto thought desperately. Wind and water are your natural primary and secondary nature affinities, Naruto. My chakra has granted an affinity for fire, while the cube has granted you an affinity for earth. Kurama reasoned from within the boy's mind. Let's just say that two of these elements are a gift from my tenants. Naruto explained as realization dawned in Kakashi's and Sasuke's eyes. The look he gave the two girls also made it clear to them that they did not want to find out what he meant. This will be very, very easy then. Aside from each of your individual training, I will also introduce you into teamwork exercises often, as well as exercises to build up both your physical strength, chakra reserves and chakra control. Be here by 6 tomorrow morning. Believe me when I say that there will no longer be any tardiness, and I do not expect any from you. I say this on my honor as a Jonin shinobi of Konohagakure no Sato. You may now rest. Dismissed. Kakashi said finally as the four genin leapt away. He smiled to himself contentedly until he remembered that his friends and colleagues had been invited to the Hokage Tower to watch his performance. He sighed heavily. He would probably never live this down. With a heavy heart, he shunshined his way into the Hokage office only to be clapped on the back as the members in the room all burst out laughing. Unknown location. Kabuto Yakushi was not scared of many things. But the sight before him led him to hunker down into the shadows. In front of Orochimaru stood four of the Snake Sanin's most powerful warriors, and they were mad. Scratch that. Furious. They were simply furious. Where is our brother Orochimaru? Where have you sent him and why has he not come back? Hanu snarled, flames burning in his hand. If anything has happened to him, you will pay. Lightning coursed entirely through Moru's body as he made the threat. Tell us everything now. Orochimaru. Dekashi warned as water started leaking from his body. Last chance, Orochimaru. Kyufu sneered, violent winds filling the enclosed room. Despite all this, Orochimaru sat down calmly in his chair. He was slightly put off by the willingness to attempt to kill him, they could even possibly succeed. But he had to tell them the truth. If they found out any other way about Osamu's fate, it would do him no good. Your brother Osamu was sent to Konoha to retrieve a forbidden scroll from Mizuki and obtain the Kyubi Jinchuriki as well. It turns out the Jinchuriki was more powerful than anticipated and managed to defeat your brother in combat. He is now locked within Konoha. The Sannin froze when the killing intent in the room spiked. You sent our brother against a Jinchuriki. Moru yelled and Orochimaru was forced to dodge as a lightning bolt struck the seat he had been in a second before. The stone throne shattered as the lightning connected, a testament to the power wielded by the ones in front of him. Hanu grabbed his brother's hand and forced him down. Let him finish Moru. If we are not satisfied, then we will kill him. Reluctantly, the lightning guardian lowered his hand but never averted his glare on Orochimaru. Kabuto here will free Osamu later tonight. There is no need for you to worry. Orochimaru reassured them. You would be wise to follow your words, Snake. A deep voice bellowed from the doorway. The four elemental titans froze and immediately bowed to the new presence. I am sorry, father, we did not see you there. Kyofu apologized sincerely, fear evident in his voice as he spoke for his siblings. Kyojin, Orochimaru whispered. I want my youngest son back by tomorrow, Orochimaru. The deep voice ordered before it left the room, taking its ominous presence along with it. The four siblings sighed in relief. You heard him, Orochimaru. The pale man nodded. Kabuto, arrange for a meeting with the Akatsuki. I have information to share with them. After that, head to Konoha and get Osamu the hell out of there. Orochimaru ordered. The spectacle-wearing boy hastily made his way out, not at all comfortable in a room with these giants. Dekashi. Orochimaru called. Let our three guests in now. Dekashi bowed and moved to the end of the room to allow three figures in. Kuku, look what we have here. 3 of the 7 swordsmen of the mist. Zabuza Momochi, Kushimaru Kuriarer, Jinpachi Munashi. What can I do for the 3 of you? We accept your offer, Orochimaru. Zabuza stated simply. Orochimaru's evil laugh echoed throughout the underground cavern. Well then, what are we waiting for? Web links. Orochimaru's base. Dekashi. Orochimaru called. Let our 3 guests in now. Dekashi bowed and moved to the end of the room to allow 3 figures in. Kuku, look what we have here. 3 of the 7 swordsmen of the mist. Zabuza Momochi, Kushimaru Kuriarer, Jinpachi Munashi. What can I do for the 3 of you? We accept your offer, Orochimaru. Zabuza stated simply. Orochimaru's evil laugh echoed throughout the underground cavern. Well then, what are we waiting for? Zabuza kept a blank expression. How can we be sure that you will stick to your end of the deal? Orochimaru chuckled humorlessly as he waved his hand around in the air uncaringly. Do not worry, Zabuza-kun. I have already promised aid for the rebellion forces in Kiri, just like we agreed upon. Zabuza grit his teeth forcibly. Not that. Orochimaru looked thoughtful for a moment. Was there something else? Zabuza growled. Where is Haku and what have you done with her? The bandaged man paused when Orochimaru tilted his head questioningly to the side. We can start with you returning Haku to us, Orochimaru. Zabuza suggested in a menacing tone. Those present noticed the rapid temperature drop in the room as it plummeted down. Orochimaru smirked back at the swordsman. Oh yes, we do have that little issue about my bargaining chip now, don't we? He mocked as the 3 swordsmen bristled in anger, none more so than Zabuza, however. Zabuza, Jinpachi and Kushimaru gripped their respective sword handles as a thick mist began to fill the room. All the while the 3 swordsmen were glaring at the snake Sannin, piling on the massive killing intent. If you have done anything to her, Jinpachi started, his shibuki slowly filling with explosive notes. Anything at all, Kushimaru continued as he twirled Nuibari. Zabuza looked up with eyes that were blazing with fury. Then you will pay. He snarled just as he disappeared from sight, his voice echoing from all around the large room. Flashback 7 years ago. Zabuza growled through his bandages as he viciously cleaved a man in two with the kubikiri before spinning around and delivering a powerful kick that shattered his would-be attacker's chest, sending him flying. The kubikiri was then swung around in a large arc, ending another 3 unfortunate lives. He turned towards the sound of explosions and saw Jinpachi mercilessly ripping through the enemy ranks. The bearded swordsman wasn't bothering for grace and simply swung the massive exploding sword that blasted anything in its path. On the other side of the clearing, the enemies were being sewn together, literally. Among the 3 swordsmen, Kushimaru's victim screamed the most as Nuibari pierced them, the wire attaching them to the needle sword's next victim. Zabuza's kills were quick because of the powerful slashes he was capable of inflicting. Jinpachi's kills were always immediately engulfed in the massive explosions. But Kushimaru preferred piercing them in the most painful areas while being careful not to kill them. If that wasn't enough, the swordsman showed his dexterity by tying all the pierced men together to suffer a painful death. The needle swordsman wasn't proud of what he was doing, but he would say these men deserved it. Who would send a force of over 500 ninja to destroy an innocent, civilian village? Oh, of course, Yagura, the current Mizukage. The Inhuman, as they had dubbed him, was apparently fearful of those with bloodline limits and had ordered a mass cleansing of them from his country. This had caused the bloody civil war, which was now in motion, to occur with Yagura's forces on one side and the bloodline users on the other. The harsh fact was, Yagura did not discriminate between man and woman, or adult or child, or even whether they were civilian. If you had a bloodline user in your village, you were considered impure and massacred. And that was exactly what was happening here. Zabuza, Jinpachi and Kushimaru had been ordered by the resistance leader to aid the village as they had gotten intel that it would be under attack. Mei Terumi had sent them along with 15 other powerful warriors, all of which were now dead. The 3 swordsmen stood side by side as they gazed at the fires that ravaged the small village. "This is unbelievable," Kushimaru snarled. "And we are the monsters here, aren't we, Zabuza?" Jinpachi remarked sarcastically while swinging Shibuki over his shoulder like a baseball bat. "We must hurry," Zabuza stated, his voice devoid of any emotion. "There might still be some that we can save in there. And I hear Yagura sent the other 3 here once he heard of us." Jinpachi and Kushimaru grimaced. The other 3 were the remaining swordsmen of the mist that had remained loyal to Yagura. They were the second most powerful card of the deadly Mizukage. The trump card being himself, considering that he was the Sanbi Jinchuriki. Despite their power, the 3 knew a match against their 4 comrades was not going to end well for them. Raiga Kurosuke, Mangetsu Hazuka and Jinin Akebino together with their respective swords consisting of the Kiba, Haramakare and Kabutowari were truly a powerful force to behold. Once, long ago, all 7 of them had been working together against the armies that dared march against Kiri and were feared as the 7 swordsmen of the mist, but now they were split in half. Zabuza, Jinpachi and Kushimaru could not accept what their Mizukage was doing, it destroyed their beliefs. Unfortunately, the other 3 did not see it the same way and branded them as traitors. Kisame Hoshigaki was unknown. It was rumored that he had killed his entire squad on a delivery mission before becoming a missing nin. It was too bad. Zabuza was sure that Kisame would have joined them, being he was one of the more honorable swordsmen in the group. They were still unsure which half was stronger, but they were not willing to find out. With the urgency settled, the 3 rebellious swordsmen leapt towards the village, killing any ninja in their path. There was no worry about killing innocent ninja as this had been purely a civilian village. Their feet crunched against the cold snow as they glanced at all the fires around them, their faces set in a grim line. This was only one of hundreds of villages that Yagura had mercilessly destroyed. They were brought out of their musing when they heard a scream on the other end of the village. They rushed towards the house where the sound came from, only to see a horde of men burst in through the door chanting, "Kill the ice users!" The swordsmen froze. They each only knew of only one ice user in this region, and she had been her good friend of theirs. They arrived just in time to see Horde impale a man that had been apparently guarding the door. They vaguely recognized him as the husband of their childhood friend before they started slaughtering the men outside the house. Zabuza viciously plowed through them, desperate to reach the inside of the house. At least 10 men had already entered. The demon of the mist charged through the enemy, relying on his 2 comrades to cover him. They would understand. He burst in through the door ready to kill, but what Zabuza saw made his heart run cold. He had arrived only to see 2 men ram their swords into his friend's chest. An unspeakable rage built up inside him. He was going to make them pay in the worst way possible. But there was someone who was apparently more affected by her death than he was. He heard a shilling scream as spikes made of pure ice ended the lives of the remaining men in the room. Zabuza blinked for a moment before he saw the little girl that was clutching her mother's dying form. Zabuza rushed over to his longtime friend and kneeled down next to her. "Katomi. Katomi, can you hear me?" Zabuza cried out as he cradled her head in his arms. Katomi coughed up a little blood before smiling at the swordsman. "Hello Zabu-chan, it's nice to see you again," she said weakly. Normally Zabuza would have retaliated for being called that name again, but right now he could feel tears coming to his eyes. Katomi turned a little to her side. "Do you see her?" she asked as she stroked the little girl that was clinging to her as if she was a lifeline. Zabuza noted the little girl that had just used the ice attacks and nodded. Katomi smiled again as she stroked the child's hair. "This is my daughter Zabu-chan, her name is Haku. Can I ask you to keep her safe for me?" Zabuza felt eyes widen in shock as he stiffened. Noticing his turmoil, the dying woman looked up at him. "Please Zabuza. Give her a life which my husband and I can longer give. You are the only one I can trust with this." Just as she said that, Kushimaru and Jinpachi entered the room. Just like Zabuza, they froze at the sight in horror. Katomi coughed up a little more blood before smiling again. "Ah yes, I can trust them as well." Jinpachi and Kushimaru crouched down sadly next to Zabuza and they immediately agreed to whatever Katomi had just requested, seeing that Zabuza was also nodding. "Do not worry Katomi, we swear it on our lives and honor as swordsmen that we will protect and raise your daughter as you would have," Zabuza promised, cutting his palm and letting the blood drop onto the ground. Next to him, the other 2 repeated the process one by one. Katomi gave them a grateful nod before turning to her daughter. "Haku." The little girl just gripped her mother tighter. "Mom, don't go," she sobbed. "Don't leave." All 4 adult hearts melted at the sight of such an innocent child. Katomi started crying as her heart clenched. "I'm sorry my little angel, but mommy cannot stay with you anymore." Haku sobbed harder. "I'm sorry Mom. I'll do whatever you want. I'll be a good girl. I'll help you clean the house. She was silenced by a finger on her lips. Katomi put her hand under her daughter's chin and raised it slowly to meet her eyes. "I want you to promise me, right now, that you will carry on living. Promise me that you will find a purpose in this world and live life to the fullest." "Please Haku, please. I promise mother," Haku stated confidently. If this was her mother's last wish then she would fulfill it. "And try not to give these 3 a hard time while you are with them," Katomi joked lightheartedly. She coughed again painfully before her face returned to its calm look again. With great effort she sat up and kissed Haku's forehead lovingly. "I love you, my daughter," Katomi said before she dropped down, lifeless. The 3 swordsmen looked down at the floor beneath them in respect. "Mom?" Haku asked tenderly. "Mom?" Haku shook her a little before realization hit her and the tears came once again. "Mom!" Haku screamed a scream filled with grief. Sadness washed over the swordsmen as they looked back at the grieving girl that was now slumped over her mother's still form. Zabuza walked up to her just as the room they were in started burning. He put a comforting hand around her shoulder. "We need to go now, Haku. Your mother would be disappointed in all of us if you joined her so soon. Make sure her death was not in vain, because she gave her life so that you could live." Haku sat up slowly and wiped the tears from her eyes. Yes, you are right. I can come with you now. Zabuza nodded to the other two, who nodded back before they exited the room to look for danger. Zabuza took a few steps forward before offering his hand to the small girl, who took it. Together they turned back to Katomi, who looked peaceful at rest. I love you too, Mom, Haku said before following Zabuza out of the room just as the flames overcame it. Flashback end. Cuckoo. Please do not tell me you will do something as stupid as attack me in my own base. I know for a fact that each one of you is smarter than that. Orochimaru scolded. Zabuza's voice echoed from all around the room. We shall see, Orochimaru, we shall see. Realizing the danger, each of the four brothers activated their cursed seals to the first level. There are 8 vital points on each of your bodies, Zabuza continued coldly, still nowhere in sight. The heart, the spine, the lungs, the larynx, the kidneys, the jugular vein and the collarbone. Which one would you like me to strike? The brothers shivered a little while Orochimaru's smirk only grew wider. Konoha Hokage office. Kakashi was trying his absolute best not to lash out at his sniggering comrades behind. Taking a deep breath, Kakashi put on a big eye smile. Hokage-sama, I have finished conducting my genin exam and they have passed with flying colors. Asuma couldn't stop himself. Really? How well did they do? Beneath the mask Kakashi scowled. Kakashi, my most youthful rival. Your team's flames of youth burn brighter than mine. I will see to it that my team can also knock you out. Guy shouted out, pointing at Kakashi. Kakashi's right eye twitched. Hokage-sama, I have concluded that my team is not suitable for D ranks. Asuma's chuckling interrupted him. Oh really now Kakashi, I wonder why? The bearded man asked innocently as he drew a breath from his pipe. Kakashi's glare prevented any further remarks. And I hereby request that I train them for an entire month with no D-rank responsibilities. At the end of this period then I can assure that they will be ready to take on C-rank missions. Hiruzen raised an eyebrow. I can see where you are coming from, but how will we test if they will be ready? They are still genin after all. Kakashi's eye smile made Hiruzen curious. I have a solution for that. Kakashi stated cheerily. I suggest that Asuma and Guy form a pair to spar with my team at the end of the month. If my team cannot be taken down within 1 hour then they are ready. This also includes, however, the fact that it may not reach an hour before Asuma and Guy are knocked out. I would also like teams 8, 9 and 10 watching. Asuma's cigarette dropped to the floor unceremoniously as his mouth was gaping at Kakashi. Kurenai was unsure what to think and Hiruzen was very amused at his son's predicament. Guy, however, wasn't put off one bit about facing Kakashi's team. Yash. Do not worry Kakashi. I accept such a youthful challenge, for it will fan not only mine, but our entire team's flames of youth. Kakashi turned to Guy with a very happy expression plastered on. As you wish Guy. Oh and just so you know, Naruto has 4 elemental affinities and Sasuke has 2. Together all 5 elements are present and I plan on teaching them most of the ninjutsu I know. I don't have 1,000 techniques for nothing. With Naruto's mass shadow clones I am sure that I can embed most of them into him as his chakra capacity is immense. I will just work on his chakra control. The same can be said for Sasuke. I will also start tutoring Sakura in genjutsu so that she can be more creative and I plan on teaching Tenten about some ninjutsu and some accompanying seals to add to her weapons. This is all but a preview anyway, so I hope that you and Asuma will be prepared in a month, Guy. Asuma stuttered a little. Wait. The Hokage has not approved of this yet. I would really like him to. Hopefully my team seriously injures the both of you. Kakashi suggested. How unyouthful. Guy exclaimed. But the Hokage hasn't approved yet. Don't count your eggs before they hatch. Asuma stated confidently. Who said that? I approve of your method Kakashi. Carry on. Hiruzen laughed. Asuma glared back at his father while the older Sarutobi laughed. You just want to see a good fight don't you? He asked sourly. What's wrong Asuma? Scared to lose to a couple of genin? Kakashi teased. Hiruzen laughed again as his son bristled. Okay, that's enough for now, I've got other things that I need to be doing. The Sandame dismissed them. The four nodded before disappearing in their own respective shunshin, if guy running out the door at an insane speed counted as a shunshin. Once the room was cleared, Hiruzen turned to the other three occupants whose faces were set in irritated frowns. We have some troubling issues here, Hiruzen. Kaharu scowled. You should carefully analyze everything you sign, this is a huge mess. Homura added gravely as he shifted through another pile of paperwork. My root has also found troubling news. Danzo added. There have been too many frauds recently and they have caught 2 or 3 Kumo spies in the past day alone. Hiruzen looked at the three elders. Then let us fix this mess. I am afraid I have gone lax these past few years. Hiruzen said grimly. The three elders nodded in agreement. There was a lot to work on. But Hiruzen was clearly back in the picture as a power figure, and that was already something to rejoice about. The only other thing they now wished for was that he would snap out of his peaceful ways and recognize the threat of the other villages getting ready for war. A few hours later. After their successful genin exam, the now official Team 7 wandered off together for lunch and had somehow ended up at Ichiraku's ramen. After each downing a bowl, well, 3 in Naruto's case, Sasuke turned to his blonde brother with a curious look. Tenten and Sakura noticed this as well, as Naruto had been uncharacteristically quiet after their match with Kakashi and the whiskered blonde seemed to be deep in thought. Oi Naruto, Sasuke called out, receiving a small nod in response. What's on your mind? Something's bothering you. Naruto turned to Sasuke before smiling sheepishly. Well, you see, I've got something to be doing tonight. I sort of promised it yesterday to someone. It didn't take long for Sasuke to connect the dots. By the looks on the girls' faces, he was sure they figured it out as well. Sasuke's eyes widened before he started laughing out loud. Oh yeah. You've got that date with Hinata, don't you? Naruto's head snapped back up with a small blush. Well, I wouldn't call it a date, I just invited her to eat out with me. Behind him, Tenten giggled as she crossed her arms. Oh come on Whisker-kun, I'm not sure about you but that sounds like a date to me. Beside her, Sakura grinned. And if I'm right, you are nervous, aren't you? She added. Sasuke began laughing again. Maybe it's because he doesn't know what to do. Naruto glared back at his black-haired brother. And you would? He asked sarcastically. The comment caught Sasuke off guard and the Uchiha took a little time to think. Finally he sighed. No, I don't think I would. He admitted dejectedly. Naruto grinned before it was replaced by a frown. Now I don't even know what to wear or where to bring her. Actually, I don't even know what we're supposed to be doing. This is so complicated, Ibeo. Naruto cried out in frustration as he banged his head on the counter. Tenten giggled again. You'd better think of something fast, Whisker-kun, it's already 3 and you're picking her up at 6, remember? Not helping Panda-chan. Naruto replied with his head still on the counter. Suddenly the blonde boy's head shot up. Aha! That's it! He yelled out excitedly, giving a few people quite a scare. Naruto, quiet down. You're scaring away the customers. Chuki complained mockingly from within the kitchen. Sorry. Naruto called out before turning back to his friends. I'm just going to ask our mother Sasuke. She'll know what to do. See you tomorrow, guys. Naruto shouted out before bolting out of the store towards the Uchiha district. Sasuke smiled after his blonde brother for a minute before he realized something. Naruto. You made me pay the bill again. He shouted angrily after the whiskered boy. The Uchiha swore when he heard a mocking laugh in the distance. Hyuga compound. Little did they know, however, that Hinata was just as clueless as Naruto in this subject. Her parents were pleased that she no longer stuttered and had very little confidence issues now. 1 year around the boy had really rubbed off on her. But that didn't take away the fact that she was clueless. She barely registered that she had just been standing and simply staring at her open wardrobe for the past hour. She was brought back to attention by her mother walking in with a knowing smile on her face. "Having trouble, dear?" Hitomi asked gently. Hinata turned to her mother and reluctantly nodded. "Yes," she admitted sadly. The Hyuga girl started waving her hands around in a frustrated manner while pacing around the room. "I mean, he wasn't even being clear. Are we going out as friends to eat? Or is it a date? Where are we going? What should I dress for to be appropriate? How long will we even be out?" Hinata finally stopped her rant as she dropped down unceremoniously on the floor to stare up at the ceiling. Hitomi merely smiled at her daughter. To tell the truth, she knew exactly what was going to take place. Makoto had gotten her in to arrange the perfect first date once the Uchiha clan head had found out about Naruto's proposal. But she wasn't going to tell her daughter that now was she. "Sweetheart, why don't you try just wearing casual clothing? No weapons or anything else, but the attire should be just perfect," Hitomi suggested innocently. Hinata turned her head to face her mother while still on the floor before sighing. "Gah, Mom, I don't know. I guess I'll just leave it to you." The Hyuga heiress didn't notice her mother's devious smile. "Well, I'm sure we've got something." Uchiha compound, 3 hours later. "And there we go, now you are all set, Naruto," Makoto said excitedly after clapping her hands together in excitement. Naruto eyed himself in the mirror and couldn't help but give a small grin. His mother sure knew what she was doing. His upper torso attire remained the same with the black shirt and dark orange long sleeve that came with the mask, which he was now reluctant to take off. His mother, however, had insisted that he put on some baggy jeans that lacked weapon pouches, and Makoto had practically snarled at him when he said he wanted to carry a weapon pouch. She had then proceeded to outline every single aspect that a male must do on the first date, which took a good 2.5-hour portion out of their 3-hour time, something which she ensured he was paying rapt attention to. After his clothing, Makoto then decided to put a weird substance on his hair that made it glossy and appear to shine. After that, he had to practice eating with the mask on while reciting everything that he had just been lectured on. And now here he was, ready to tackle on his first date. Makoto had already reserved a place for the two of them in one of the higher-class restaurants in Konoha, and she had insisted that he should not worry about price or anything similar to it. Naruto had been very hesitant before she reminded him why he was wearing the mask and why he should have no problems in giving Hinata a good time. Naruto was still nervous, of course, and he still wondered if his mother's plans would really work. What he didn't know was that Makoto and Hitomi had managed to get time together and discuss what they needed to contribute for the night, therefore they knew exactly what the young ones would be expecting of each other. The walk to the Hyuga compound was one of the longest walks that Naruto had ever had to take. It felt like the build-up to an exciting fight with unknown variables, and at the same time it didn't. At least in a fight, Naruto could rely on his instincts as well as the advice of his inner voices to think on his feet. This was different. The blonde boy knew that he was heading into uncharted waters, and even if he had been briefed thoroughly, he couldn't help but wonder if he would even be able to act properly and on cue. In this situation, his inner tenants were not helping either, being that the robots had no such experience either and did not fully understand it, whereas Kurama laughed at him before promptly turning a blind eye to his container's predicament. When he entered the compound, he managed to settle his nerves a little and took a deep breath before knocking on Hiyashi's office. "Come in," the Hyuga clan head called out. And just like that, Naruto began sweating profusely again. His mother hadn't really told him how to deal with the father of the girl before taking her out. They were close, that was for sure, as Hiyashi had even adopted Naruto once before, but again this was different. He was no longer talking to his father figure, rather the father figure of the girl he was taking out. And those were nowhere near each other. His father figure would have probably supported him in his decision, but the father of the date would probably be opposed to the idea and would be critical in judging Naruto's intentions. In short, it would be the same thing as presenting himself to a totally changed man. And he was right. He entered the room slowly to see the Hyuga clan head sitting calmly at his desk with his back straight and hands at the sides. The normally cheerful face Naruto was used to seeing had been set into the stoic Hyuga face, and it shot out waves of authority that made Naruto seem smaller than he actually was. The now cold, white eyes stared at him carefully as Naruto held his back ramrod straight with both his hands behind his back. The blonde boy had never seen this side of Hiashi before, much less been under the scrutinizing gaze of one, and he was terrified even if he didn't show it. Terrified of what exactly, he wasn't sure. But he was terrified nonetheless. It seemed like an eternity before either of them made a move, and in the end it was Hiashi who decided to break the oppressing silence, only to replace it with a crushing atmosphere. "Why are you here?" he asked impassively. Other than the clan head's mouth, none of his other body parts had even moved. Naruto almost jumped when he heard the voice, and despite what he was feeling, he forced himself to swallow the tenseness and refused to stutter, even if that would have been a reasonable thing to do. "I am here to fetch your daughter for an outing which we have both agreed on, Hiashi-sama. I humbly request your permission to proceed with the activity," the blonde boy said with a slight bow. Inside, Hiashi was enjoying himself immensely. It wasn't every day he got to do this with a boy that was dating his daughter, and he would not waste the opportunity. "Why should I give you permission to do so? She is my eldest and I care for her very much." He continued staring unblinkingly at the masked boy and inwardly grinned. The parts of his face not covered by the mask were glistening with sweat. Naruto gulped. "Because I believe that I can give her a good time and that we would both enjoy celebrating our recent graduation from the academy." "May I ask, if you are celebrating, then why is it only you two? Should you not be with your friends?" Hiashi honestly felt like he was interrogating the poor boy for no real reason whatsoever, but he didn't care, he was having fun. "We were planning on making tonight special as the official celebration for our class is still 2 days from now," Naruto reasoned. "I do not see the harm in waiting," Hiashi commented. Naruto knew he was fighting a losing battle, but he would not give up. Hiashi decided to continue. "And I would feel much safer when she is not alone with you. Despite me not doubting your abilities to protect her from others, how can I be sure that taking her out are your only intentions with my daughter?" And just like that, Naruto's fear evaporated as he glared at the clan head. He was a little thick when it came to this subject, but he wasn't stupid. The double meaning was caught clear as day. "With all due respect, Hiashi-sama, if those are your views of me, then I will state freely that you are being unfair and are acting out of character. I will not dream of hurting Hinata-chan, and I think we both know it," Naruto replied back, being brutally blunt. Naruto was getting ready for another comeback, should the argument continue, before he was caught off guard by Hiashi breaking out into an all-out laugh. The Hyuga clan head leaned back in his chair, still laughing as the atmosphere in the room lifted. Sorry Naruto," he wheezed out in between his laughs. Naruto was seriously debating whether to laugh along with the man, glare at him, or plan out an elaborate prank with frenzy. "I could only think of now to do this, and it worked perfectly," Hiashi added gleefully, his childish persona rising out. Naruto finally decided to glare at the Hyuga clan head, which only caused Hiashi to laugh harder. "Hiashi-sama," Naruto mock growled. The blonde boy then decided to cross his arms and pout, even if Hiashi couldn't see it. The notion, however, was not missed. "I'll get you back one day, Hiashi-sama, I'll have the next laugh," Naruto declared bravely. Hiashi was just about to taunt him to try before they were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. "Hiashi, may we come in?" Hitomi asked gently from behind the door. Hiashi, still with a slight smile, gave them permission to enter. The 3 girls in Hiashi's life then entered the room one by one. There was nothing different about Hanabi and Hitomi in terms of attire, but the one that caught his eye was the last one to enter. "May I present, Nei-chan?" Hanabi giggled childishly while using her hands to emphasize her older sibling. Naruto's eyes widened a bit when he caught sight of the slightly blushing Hinata. At least, that's what everyone could see as a visible reaction. If he hadn't been wearing the orange mask, then he would have been clearly seen with his mouth hanging open. He had mostly seen Hinata wearing her brown jacket, which she was almost never seen without nowadays, so this new sight was something to behold. Hinata was wearing a white, short-sleeved, frilly shirt that reached mid-thigh, and this was matched by tight, black leggings that just made it past her knees. There had been no need to put on any form of makeup to match the outfit, and due to her short hair, Hinata had no problems with styling it. He could barely smell a tint of a new perfume on her that he couldn't quite place. He wasn't complaining though. The best part of the whole outfit, however, was that Hinata seemed proud of what she looked like, and she was standing with her back straight and her hands behind her back. While the whiskered blonde was busy inspecting her, Hinata was doing the same. Unlike Team 7, this had been her first time seeing Naruto's new attire, and quite frankly, she liked it. It made him seem older and more mature than his age, and also added a little bit of mysteriousness to him. Hinata only realized that he was meant to dress casually due to the jeans and lack of weapons pouches. His perfume smelled of the forest, like fresh dew early in the morning. It was strong enough for her to catch a good waft and inadvertently make her smile, much to Naruto's satisfaction. Hitomi coughed lightly to get the pair's attention away from each other. They turned to her expectantly while she smiled at their looks, almost eager to get going. It reminded her of a time when she was their age, although she and Hiyashi had it hidden more efficiently. Before you go, I believe Hiyashi has something to say to the both of you. Naruto scowled. It was even visible through the mask, and Hiyashi burst out laughing again. I believe we have already had out talk, Hitomi. The Hyuga clan head chuckled. Just bring her back before 10, you two can go now. Hiyashi quickly added after another impatient scowl from the blonde boy. Naruto's mood did a sudden 180. All right. See you later, Hiyashi-sama. Naruto cheered lightly. Hinata walked up to her dad and gave him a kiss on the cheek. See you later, Dad, she said before walking up to Naruto, who opened the door up for her. After the door shut, the two adults shared a look with a smile while Hanabi squealed in delight. Finally. Took them long enough. She sighed exhaustedly before dropping dramatically onto the couch in her father's office. Hitomi, feel free to join Makoto tonight. I'm sure you two have plans. Hiyashi said knowingly. Hitomi grinned before walking up to her husband and giving him a quick kiss. Yes, we do. See you later, dear. Hitomi waved before walking out the door as well. Hiyashi then turned to the only other person left in the room. Hey Hanabi, want to play with Daddy? The little girl shook her head violently before bolting out of the room. Hiyashi sighed deeply. Now that he had no excuses left, he had to return to his clan head duties. In other words, more paperwork. He sighed again before he picked up the pen. If only Hiruzen had kept all of this paperwork to himself, he mused before setting to work. Outside. The street Naruto was leading them down just happened to be facing the sun just as it started to set, casting orange and red across the sky. The pair walked in comfortable silence as the great ball of fire slowly descended over the horizon. As they walked, Hinata turned to study her date. The glow of the setting sun managed to light up his masked face. Hinata took the time to admire the features that were on display. Even after all those times she had seen him, every single time was just like the first. It was upon studying him that she realized something was wrong. Something was out of place. Upon closer inspection she found it, and she did not like what she saw. Naruto was not as relaxed as he seemed. The blonde boy was tense, and Hinata managed to catch his eyes flitting around at every passerby on the street, at every shadow. It was like he was expecting something to jump out at him at any time. Hinata knew he could sometimes be paranoid. She had walked with him enough times to catch the looks of sheer hate and malice that was sent his way by the majority of the villagers. Even with his features masked, her date didn't seem to feel safe. Taking a quick look around, Hinata quickly deduced that the villagers did not seem to recognize Naruto. But knowing the whiskered boy, he didn't trust his disguise enough. She couldn't take it. Hinata wanted to enjoy the night, but she couldn't do so with Naruto this tense. The Hyuga heiress quickly decided to resolve the situation. She put a hand on his shoulder to get his attention. A frown marred her features when he suddenly tensed before realizing who the hand belonged to. "What's wrong, Naruto-kun? Something's bothering you." Hinata spoke softly. In the back of her head she realized that she was sounding a little bit like her mother. The whiskered boy stopped walking to look at her nervously. "Well, this is my first time doing this. I guess I'm just nervous," he replied a little shakily as he gave a half-hearted excuse. Hinata also stopped to look him in the eye. "Naruto-kun, this is my first time on a date as well. And you don't see me acting like you are. Something's wrong and it would really be nice if you could tell me. I want you to enjoy tonight as well. If you can't do it for yourself then can you at least do it for me?" Naruto sighed deeply as he looked down. "To be honest Hinata-chan, it's not that I am nervous about the date itself. You know how the villagers are to me and I'm just scared they may ruin it for you. Even if mother reassured me about today, I don't feel like everything is going to go just fine," he admitted grudgingly. Hinata looked at him for a minute. "It can't be that bad, Naruto-kun. And nothing can really stop us from having fun. But things have never gone okay for me when I'm doing anything here in this village on my own. The only time I'm treated fairly is when mother, Hitomi-sama or Auntie Yugiri are with me. Or some of my friends. Other than that, everyone just seems to have it in for me." Naruto looked down. Hinata sighed before taking Naruto's hand in hers. She met his gaze when he looked up at her. "Then I guess it's my job to make sure you don't do anything in this village alone then, isn't it?" she asked reassuringly. The Hyuga heiress smiled when she saw the masked boy's blue eyes light up at her words. "And don't worry, I don't think anyone will recognize you with that cool mask anyway. Where did you get it?" And just like that, the conversation turned back to normal grounds as the pair resumed their walk to wherever Naruto had in mind. Or in this case, whatever Makoto had already planned out for him and had instructed him to follow. Unknown to the pair however, they were being followed by a group that was hidden cleverly by a slightly effective genjutsu that they relied on to conceal themselves. Slowly but surely they made sure to follow the pair silently. By the time Hinata and Naruto reached the restaurant, the sub had long since set and the streets were starting to get busier as people prepared themselves for a night out. Hinata took one look at the massive and stylish restaurant before raising a hand to cover her gasp. "Naruto-kun, is that?" She felt like Naruto was grinning under the mask. "Yes, it is one of the more high-class restaurants in Konoha. It's where tourists tend to go to as well." Hinata was still in awe of the place and the fact that Naruto had brought her to such a place. "But isn't it a little expensive?" she protested weakly. Naruto chuckled. "Don't worry about it, I've got it covered. And like I said earlier, let's just enjoy the night. Apparently the guard doesn't recognize me so that's a plus." Hinata giggled. "Well how can you tell he can't recognize you?" she asked curiously. Naruto pointed at the guard's face. "I think the fact that he is smiling at me is a dead giveaway Hinata-chan." The Hyuga heiress laughed. Her date was back to his usual cheeky self. Before she realized it, they were in front of the guard that they had been pointing out earlier and he was still grinning warmly. "Welcome to the Flaming Leaf sir, madam," he greeted lavishly as he opened the door for them. Hinata could tell Naruto was seriously debating whether to burst out laughing or take off his mask just to see the guard's reaction. Before he could do anything stupid the white-eyed girl latched onto his arm to lead him away from trouble. "Hinata-chan," he whined. "I wasn't going to do anything." Hinata turned to look at him as if he was a 4-year-old child. "Yeah, I can see that." Naruto's grumbling was stopped when they came into contact with the man that dealt out the reservations. "Sir, madam, good evening to you both," he greeted warmly. "May I ask what your reservation is?" "Reservation for Arata Uchiha and Hinata Hyuga." Naruto spoke calmly. The man scrolled down the massive book for a while before nodding. "Yes sir, you will be taken to your table by Himaki over here." A small girl suddenly popped out of the nearby door with an amused grin on her face. "Right this way sir." she exclaimed as she whirled round to head inside the massive restaurant. As they followed her through the enormous dining room, Hinata turned to Naruto once again. "Urata Uchiha." Naruto turned to her as well. "What's the point of me masking myself if everyone here is just going to know my real name?" Hinata laughed. "Well, Urata-kun, I guess I just have to get used to this name for every date we have in future." Naruto gulped as his mind quickly processed what she said. Inside his mindscape he heard Frenzy whistle before hearing Barricade join in. "She wants some more." The Decepticon called out. The masked boy cut the mental link before it could get out of hand. There was also a strange feeling he had that Bumblebee was dancing to something in his head, but he shook it off. "Why yeah, you probably should," Naruto replied. Hinata's ears perked up at the stutter. "Urata-kun, are you nervous?" she asked teasingly. "Huh? What? No." Naruto inwardly groaned. This was not going according to plan. How can I be nervous? It's only the first date, so that means I can't be nervous. If I'm nervous then something bad is bound to happen and then I could screw up, and then, halfway through the speech Naruto lost his confidence, which was quickly replaced by a little of his inner thoughts. He was silenced by a small finger put to his lips. "What are you rambling about if you aren't nervous?" Hinata asked gently with a knowing smile. Now Naruto wanted to skewer himself and decided just to stop talking for a while. It was probably for the best. Only then did they decide to take in their surroundings. There was a large and noisy hall that was lit by humongous chandeliers on the ceiling, and the crowded place had waiters scuttling about quickly back and forth between the clothed tables. They wondered where they were heading if it wasn't this place they were going to be dining in, and their curiosity piqued when they started heading up a flight of majestic steps. "Here we are," Himeki suddenly announced as she jumped excitedly in front of the pair. Both teenagers jumped suddenly at the suddenness of the overexcited girl. "Sorry," she suddenly exclaimed before whirling around to run off. "I'll get your menu. And your table is outside over there." Naruto started laughing when the waiter almost crashed into at least 3 tables and another waiter that was carrying a soup tray. Said waiter barely had time to raise the tray above the rushing girl's head before she dashed right next to him. "Himeki!" he roared angrily. "Sorry." The girl shot back before disappearing into the kitchen. The waiter shook his head tiredly. Hinata and Naruto headed towards where they were instructed and opened a set of glass doors onto the balcony. When the door shut, the constant chatter from behind them was quickly shut off and a comforting silence settled over them. The pair looked towards their table and both of them were put into a slight trance by the lovely placement of their reserved table. It was on a balcony on the third and uppermost floor of the restaurant and was devoid of noise from the street below. Whereas the street below was lit by yellow lights, the full moon bathed the balcony in a beautiful white glow, which was only further enhanced by the pure, black mosaic tiles that reflected the moonlight onto the glass tables that had flowers neatly arranged at the center. The metal railings were adorned with other flowers of various colors and also stopped their view of the street below, making the balcony seem like it was in a completely detached world. The view of the stars that littered the night sky was something remarkable as both teens gazed up. A slight breeze blew past the pair and slowly ruffled their hair. It was a cool sensation, not too hot and not too cold. Just perfect. There were only a total of 4 other tables that were spread quite evenly over the large balcony, clearly indicating that this place was for VIP people. And only one of the other tables was currently occupied. Naruto suddenly remembered part of what Makoto had drilled into him just hours before, and he quickly went to pull out one of the seats before indicating Hinata to take a seat. The Hyuga heiress smiled at the gesture before taking a seat. After this, Naruto gently pushed her chair in and they waited patiently for the menu as they made small talk revolving mostly around their teams. Hinata was slightly disappointed that her team had almost failed Kurenai's Genin exam but was happy overall that they had passed. Naruto then decided to take out one of his holographic memories for them both to watch as they waited. The memory, of course, was of his own Genin exam with Team 7 against Kakashi. Hinata watched in awe at the display while laughing at Kakashi's more unfortunate moments. Just as the memory finished, they heard another angry cry of, "Himeki! Sorry." The girl yelled back once again as she appeared through the balcony doors. The waiter took a moment to lean against the door, panting heavily before remembering why she was there in the first place. "Oh yes. Sir. Madam. I got your menu," she shouted out as she blurred towards them. If Naruto didn't know better, he could have sworn that she had had training as a ninja. After dropping off the two menu, the hyperactive waiter sped right back where she came from. "I'll be back here when you need me," she informed them as she ran. "Himaki. Sorry." The pair shook their heads at the girl's antics before turning back to the menu. Surprisingly, Hinata knew next to nothing about the contents, something which she admitted shyly to her date. Naruto just smiled at her as he laid down his own menu across the table so that they could both see what was available for dinner. "How do you know about all this food, Naruto-kun? I thought you hardly ever went into restaurants like this before," Hinata asked curiously. "Let's just say Mum cooks a lot and that Itachi-ni-san, Sasuke and I are very well versed in food," Naruto boasted slightly. After selecting their orders, the pair was just about to wonder about how they would call their special waiter when another cry of "Himaki" rang out. "Sorry," the girl shouted back before looking at the dating pair. "So, what are you going to order?" she asked quickly, whipping out a small notebook and a pencil in a flourish. The masked boy and the Hyuga heiress shared a look before laughing once again. The whole ordeal had taken less than 3 seconds. On a nearby roof, that was slightly higher than the restaurant balcony, the group hidden by the genjutsu was watching the pair intently. Well, most of them anyway. It was group made up of the majority of the rookie 16, with the only exceptions being Neji as he was, Neji, and Akumo Chifuyo as her parents had requested her at home for a family dinner. Most of them had been split off into pairs naturally with the people they were most comfortable with, and they were each watching the date in their own way. If you could call stargazing with a partner as watching the date, then Kaide and Shikamaru would have been considered very vigilant as they lay side by side on 2 wooden benches that they had found on the roof. "Ah, they're so sweet. I wish I could go on a date like that as well." Akane sighed as she watched them. She was so engrossed in the pair that she did not notice how intently Lee seemed to be watching Naruto's movements. Akane also never noticed how he was silent for once as he tried to lip-read what Naruto would say to Hinata and what reaction it would produce. "So, Akane-chan likes dates like that. I'll see what I can do about that," Lee thought to himself determinedly. He turned to her and gave off a small grin, not one of his blinding smiles. She would be worth it. Choji wasn't registering anything much. He was just eager to see what food they would order and whether it was going to be good. Unfortunately, the pair seemed to take a long while to simply order, and Choji had already taken to munching on his chips. When he noticed that the food wasn't going to come anytime soon, he took a seat next to Shikamaru and went right back to chomping on his snack. Kiba and Shino were playing cards and making bets on just about everything regarding the date. Bets that involved Naruto screwing up, what they would have worn for the night and such. At the moment, Kiba had lost every single bet they made, as well as every single card game. He threw down his cards in frustration. "Oi Shino, you're cheating, man," he groaned while Akamaru yipped in agreement. Shino tilted his head slightly to the side while the Aburame smiled. "Please Kiba, do not blame me for your lack of skill and luck." "Why?" "Because you are a pitiful excuse of a card player and an even more pitiful excuse of a gambler. The only reason I even play with you is because I can beat you without even trying," Shino said as he reshuffled the cards. Kiba growled as he took a share of the deck. "Bring it on, bug boy." "And I say Naruto will order chicken." Shino grinned. "And I say he will order beef." Flush. Kiba almost pulled his hair out. "Damn you, Shino." Ino, for the life of her, could not figure out what had gotten into Sakura and Sasuke. For starters, her pink-haired rival was not even trying to compete for Sasuke's attention. And not that she needed to. Sasuke seemed comfortable enough near to Sakura as they watched the date together while leaning over the balcony. She wanted to find out why. Was it because they were on the same team, or was it because they were dating? She gasped at the possibility and swore to find out soon. Upon hearing Ino gasp, Sasuke frowned. Sakura instantly understood his predicament. While the Uchiha hated fangirls and wanted to set Ino straight just like he had with Sakura, he just couldn't bring himself to do the same thing at the moment and ruin the overall mood. Sakura was already turning out to be a fair enough friend when she realized that she and Sasuke had next to no chance of being together. She didn't comment anything much however as the majority of her concentration was going into keeping the genjutsu up. "Hey Ten-chan, wanna go on a date?" Arashi prodded the bun-haired girl. "No." Tenten said bluntly as she went back to watching the pair dreamily. "Come on, I can give you a great date, Ibeo." Arashi persisted. His answer was a kunai nicking off a few more strands of red hair. "Leave me alone Arashi, I'm busy watching them." "No you're not," Arashi said cheekily. Wah, Tenten got as far as that before she started thrashing around wildly and rolling around the floor. "No Arashi stop. I'm ticklish." She squealed in between gasps of laughter. Arashi grinned now that he had the upper hand. "Only if you say yes to a date with me." "Never." Tenten laughed out. Arashi's grin just grew wider. "Fine then," he replied before tickling her all over again. Tenten couldn't think clearly as she was getting slightly dizzy from the tickling and decided to throw a punch in Arashi's general direction. Her fist was greeted by a strong jawbone that sent the red-haired boy flying backwards, rubbing his jaw while she stood back up shakily. "Never do that again," Tenten threatened. She never expected what happened next. Due to her being slightly dizzy, she couldn't react fast enough to avoid it. Arashi suddenly leapt up and planted a kiss on her cheek before jumping off the roof. "See you tomorrow Ten-chan," he called out. The attention previously on the date was now turned to Tenten as they had heard and seen most of what had happened. The bun-haired girl slowly brought a hand up to the cheek that had been kissed while there was a faraway look in her eyes. "He kissed me," she whispered quietly to herself. Then realization sank in and her eyes burned with white-hot fury as she summoned a gigantic spiked mace that she raised high above her head. "He kissed me," she yelled angrily before leaping over the roof after Arashi. Down in the street below the rookies heard something which brought around a small round of laughter. "Hi Ten-chan. Want another kiss? I'm going to kill you." "Don't you mean kiss?" Wham! Smash! Crunch! Crack! Bam! A few minutes later a slightly winded Tenten made her way back onto the roof where the other rookies stared at her. "What?" she growled, raising her large mace once again. The other rookies wisely returned to what they were doing in watching the date. By this time the pair had already ordered their meals which were carried in slowly by a much more careful waiter. Someone in the kitchen just didn't seem to trust Himaki in carrying the food. It wasn't very hard to wonder why. A total of 5 dishes were chosen for the pair in the belief that they would be served in small amounts. They were wrong. Each dish seemed to have the capacity to fill at least 2 people. Naruto didn't mind this very much considering his appetite, but Hinata was feeling more than a bit nervous. The reason being was that she wasn't like most other girls in her class that stuck to diets and the like, and she would admit to being very embarrassed regarding her own eating habits. They weren't very excessive, mind you, just what her mother dubbed a healthy amount for active kunoichi like herself. The problem was even if her mother deemed it a healthy amount and a good habit, she was unsure what her date would think and whether she should eat her normal amount and risk being called fat or reduce her intake and risk being called another pointless dieter. Unaware of his partner's inner turmoil, Naruto looked towards Hinata before asking a question that solved her problems. "Hinata-chan, please tell me you can help me finish this." Naruto all but pleaded. The Hyuga heiress nodded quickly with a smile before voicing a question that had been bugging her as she watched her date arrange food onto his spoon. "Naruto-kun, how are you going to eat with your mask on?" She was surprised when he suddenly began chewing and she noticed that the food he had been arranging on his spoon had disappeared. Naruto then looked up at her. "I don't see the problem," he said after swallowing what he had in his mouth. Hinata's questioning gaze prompted him to answer. "It's a little jutsu that Kakashi-sensei taught me." I honestly wonder how nobody ever wondered how the Hitaki clan managed to eat in public without taking their masks off. Hinata nodded in realization before noticing something else. Her blonde date seemed to carefully taste every dish before grimacing slightly, as if he was expecting something that he didn't quite receive. Naruto pushed back his chair slowly to get up to call a waiter when Himeki suddenly appeared out of nowhere. "What do you need, sir?" she asked inquisitively. "I need something to write on and something to write with, please," Naruto replied. In the blink of an eye, the said materials appeared in Himeki's hands as she put them carefully in front of Urata. Naruto began to set to work on the writing as Hinata kept on eating, curious as to what her date was doing but at the same time being patient as she knew that he would tell her later on. When he was done, he looked over the sheet once before nodding and handing it back to the waiter. "Please take this back to the chefs," Naruto requested. Himeki nodded once before she disappeared in another flash. "What was that, Naruto-kun?" Hinata asked as she carefully chewed her food. "Just some tips I decided to give the waiters regarding the food, Hinata-chan," Naruto explained casually as he cut out a chunk of the beef steak after spreading a bit of the sauce on top. Naruto could have sworn he heard someone that sounded a little like Kiba swearing over the empty rooftop across the street but decided that it was nothing for a while. "Isn't it an insult to their cooking if you do that?" "I can't find anything wrong with this, Naruto-kun," Hinata said a little uncertainly. She wasn't confident in her tasting skills anymore. All the current dishes were delicious already in her opinion. Naruto gave out a small chuckle. "Constructive criticism isn't an insult, Hinata-chan. If they do decide to listen to it, they're going to find out how much help it will be. As for your second point, you haven't tasted anything good yet. Remind me to cook for you sometime." Hinata's opinion of Naruto shot up a few more notches. She had been close friends with him for a year and she didn't even catch a hint that he knew how to cook. Granted, she never asked. But it should have at least come into the conversation at least once, right? Unless he was purposefully hiding that skill for some reason and something made him bring it out tonight. What could that have been? Naruto caught Hinata eyeing him closely and managed to stop a grin. Makoto was right when she said that girls tended to like guys who could cook. He had thought of it as something embarrassing at first because he thought that it was a girly thing to be doing and he didn't really want anyone to know about it. Oh, how wrong he was. The pair got so lost into further conversation that before they knew it, their meal was finished and Himeki had suddenly reappeared to clear their table. Hinata knew that she was thoroughly enjoying what she would call her first date with a boy she had crushed on for quite some time now. The only thing that she did not know was how much more Naruto had still planned for the night. Naruto got off his seat a little elegantly and coughed slightly to get Hinata's attention while holding something behind his back. Using a small storage seal he had drawn onto his wrist earlier, he was able to summon the bouquet of flowers that he had carefully hand-picked earlier from the Yamanaka flower shop. Hinata gasped at the beautiful bouquet of flowers when he presented them to her. Lavender and purple roses were blended together with patches of light blue camellia flowers scattered here and there. She accepted the wonderful present from her seat with a large smile on her face as she took a sniff of the lovely flowers. The Hyuga heiress looked back up at the one who gifted her flowers only to see him cocking his head to the side a little, asking whether she liked it. His answer was a quick hug which startled him since Hinata had all but leapt out of her chair. "Thank you, Naruto-kun. It's beautiful," Hinata exclaimed happily. Naruto slowly pried her off him. "That's not all. Trace this seal," he asked her kindly as he pointed to the intricately drawn seal on the wrapping of the bouquet. The moment was interrupted by a chef that jumped out onto the balcony wildly waving around the paper that Naruto had written down before the pair had started dinner. "Urata Uchiha!" he yelled out. Hinata gulped as she looked at Naruto nervously while whispering, "I told you they would get insulted." Naruto, however, didn't seem to be bothered and was ready for any form of anger from the man. He was used to it anyways. "Yes, that is me." What they weren't expecting was for the man to leap in joy and bound towards them with a lit-up face. "I'm terribly sorry, sir, if I'm interrupting anything important, but my fellow chefs and I in the kitchen would like to make you an offer regarding your payment for tonight." We have decided that if you can spare us a few minutes in the kitchen that your bill tonight will be considered paid in full. The man spoke hurriedly. The Hyuga heiresses and the whiskered boy's eyes widened in shock before turning to each other. Hinata gave him a slight nod to show that he had permission to go. Please lead the way, Naruto said to the eager chef before turning back to Hinata. And while I'm gone, Hinata-chan, take the time trace that seal. Sure thing, Narada-kun. Hinata smiled as she started work on tracing the seal carefully. She had remembered just in time to use his cover name for the night, something which she thanked her common sense for. There was probably no worse way for her to blow up their date other than slipping up in the name calling. Seeing that she was now alone, the four people on the other table decided to include Hinata into their conversation. Dear, those are some beautiful flowers. Did you ask your date where he got them? One of the older females at the table commented. Hinata turned to the four-person group at the other table and smiled kindly. Knowing Arata-kun, he probably picked them himself from somewhere. She sighed dreamily. The young woman that had asked her the question chuckled along with the rest of her group. No need to hide from us, honey, we heard you calling him Naruto-kun before the chef came. Hinata tensed as she looked at them suspiciously. The older woman noticed this. Come. Come now, dear, why are you looking at us like that? Is it because you're both too young to be here? The woman teased. You know, as shinobi, we tend to do things early. Hinata said, still a little cautious but not wanting to sound rude. Don't worry, we won't tell your parents. Not that we know them. One of the men joked as he took a sip of wine from his glass. Right after which he put a cigarette into his mouth to smoke. Just don't do anything too serious at that age. The other woman in the grinned almost cheekily as Hinata blushed from the hidden meaning. The first woman turned to her friend with a glare. Kakasha-chan. They're still children. She scolded. Kakasha turned to her friend. Mama, Kur-chan. Leave them alone. They might want to have some fun. Kakasha said suggestively as she twirled her wine glass a bit and winked at the blushing Hyuga heiress. The other male shot up. How unyouthful. Hinata looked at them suspiciously. You guys aren't from here, are you? Kur looked at the girl in surprise. How did you figure that out? For starters, you don't seem to care who Naruto-kun is. The white-eyed girl replied. Why? Should we know him? Kakasha asked inquisitively. Is he a real looker under that mask? She added with an eye smile. Hinata shook her head before laughing. Never mind, and yes, he looks good under the mask, Kakasha-san. After that, Hinata got back to her task on tracing the seal that she had been given. She carried on making small talk to the group on the other table, but the majority of her attention went to the small seal on her flower bouquet. She noticed how her finger left light blue markings on the parts of the seal that she traced. After a good 3 to 4 minutes, the white-eyed girl managed to finish the seal, which flashed a bright white light that temporarily blinded everyone on the balcony. When the flash of light cleared, the other four at the neighboring table looked over to Hinata, or rather what was now in her lap, to sat their curiosity. The bouquet was still there, but right next to it was now a butterfly pendant. But not just any butterfly pendant. Pendant. The four-winged butterfly still had a normal silver chain, but its most noticeable feature was that it was made of a dark blue crystal and the designs on its wings were a dark blue-purple and both crystal types glinted in the moonlight. Wow. Kerr said with a hint of jealousy in her voice. Wow indeed. Naruto said as he appeared behind Hinata, who was still seated in the chair. He took both ends of the pendant and brought them around the white-eyed girl's neck before clasping them together. I hope you like it. The blonde boy said nervously. Naruto-kun, I love it. Hinata replied before giving Naruto another hug. What did you have to do in the kitchen? Naruto sighed. Apparently they chose to follow the advice I wrote on the paper a while ago and they liked the results. They called me to help assist in mending their other dishes and I even taught them a few new ones. The masked boy answered proudly. You did all that in 8 minutes. Kakasha said disbelievingly. The group then felt Naruto smirk underneath his dark orange mask. Shadow clones. Ah. Kakasha said dumbly. Naruto then held out a hand to Hinata. And our reward for my services tonight, we get 5 special dance songs from a band that's going to play that piano over there with some other instruments. So, care to dance? You don't even have to ask. Hinata replied as she took his hand. You can enter now. Urata called out. One by one a group of men in tailored suits walked out to the piano with some carrying violins and cellos. May we join? Kerr asked sweetly. Naruto nodded warmly towards their group and Kerr grabbed her smoking partner to join in on the dancing. What about you two? Naruto asked Kakasha and her partner. I'll pass. Kakasha said as she swirled her glass of wine. I don't know how to dance anyway. He partner admitted sadly. Naruto shrugged and spent the next 15 minutes dancing with Hinata, the music slow at first before it sped up gradually until the 5th song. Naruto was suddenly very glad about his crash course in dancing with his adoptive mother earlier on in the day. He had caught on easily and had wondered what was so important about the activity, until of course he experienced it firsthand with Hinata that night. Hinata on the other hand could not believe how much life was looking up for her at the moment and just didn't want it to end. Hey Hinata-chan. Naruto whispered quietly into her ear. Hinata hummed back softly with her head on his shoulder. Do you like stargazing? He asked. Yes, it's a nice thing to do at night when I can't sleep. Naruto grinned behind his mask. Good, because I know a place where we can watch the sky for a while. Without needing to pay the massive bill, Naruto was able to leave a large tip for the band and for, of course, Himeki, who gave a quick thanks before dashing back to the kitchen. Himeki. Sorry. Naruto and Hinata laughed. How long would Himeki last being the way she was? Before Naruto left he had one last issue to deal with. While Hinata's back was turned to him as she went through the glass doors, he turned around and released a chakra pulse. The 4 other guests on the rooftop wondered what had happened before they saw Naruto waving at them. Only looking at each other did they realize that their cover had been blown. Yane. Naruto waved one last time before turning to look at the rooftop across the street. I know you're there guys, try hiding better next time. Naruto called out. Damn it. They heard Kiba cry out. Naruto laughed once more and followed Hinata out through the door. On the balcony the 4 guests sighed. Busted. Asuma grunted cheerfully. I forgot he could do that. Kakashi groaned, his Kakasha form having been disabled by the chakra pulse. How unyouthful of me to forget as well. Guy Fake cried. At least Naruto-kun's flames of youth burn bright. I just need to work harder on mine. Guy declared. Asuma took a puff of smoke out of his pipe. You have a very promising student Kakashi. The bearded man complimented the one-eyed Jonin. Kakashi scowled beneath his mask. As if that wasn't obvious enough during our spar Asuma. Kurenai got in between the two before anything else could happen. Calm down boys. We at least now have an idea on what our genin standings are and how to train them. Kurenai said positively, also slightly embarrassed at being ratted out so easily. Meanwhile, Hokage office. What do you mean Osamu escaped? Hiruzen yelled angrily at the Anbu in front of him. Prisoner 4538 has escaped by yet unknown means less than an hour ago, Hokage-sama. The cat-masked Anbu reported in front of the raging Hokage. How did this happen? Danzo asked calmly but in a frighteningly solid tone. He had some inside help. The Anbu guarding the cells were all knocked out from behind using a non-lethal compound that we cannot trace, Danzo-sama. The two elders looked between Danzo and Hiruzen. Your orders, Hokage-sama? Danzo asked formally. Stop with the formality, Danzo, and order what you would have done. Hiruzen scowled. Danzo gave his old friend a smile of trust. Fu, Torun. Carry out orders to temporarily lock down the village walls and inspect every person going in and out before we search the village. With Hiruzen's permission, we will activate the chakra deactivating section on the walls to try and make sure they have not gone far. Recall the entire current Hunter Nin currently in the village and order a search and destroy operation to commence immediately. Hiruzen nodded in approval and turned to his own Anbu. You have heard Danzo and I support his plan. You will temporarily assist Danzo in this joint operation. Hi Hokage-sama. The Anbu all chanted before scattering. Unfortunately for the operation, it was already doomed to fail. Kabuto had already discovered more than one secret way to safely get out of the village, and he had already made sure that Osamu was well on his way back to Otogakure.